Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to MLS Classics Remix. Today we're going back to 2004, November 6th to be exact. You might see three faces here, but a fourth is coming. That would be Taylor Twellman, who played in that game. We got the Raccoons here. Matt Doyle with some swag that I wish I had in my own man cave. We're also joined, of course, by Aleko Eskandarian, who scored a big goal in this game, his breakout season in 2004. Boys, what's up? How's it going? How you feeling, Aleko? This is good memories for you.
Pretty good. I got dressed up. I put a button down on for the first time in a month. I've got a little glass of vino. I'm ready to rock, man. It's a good one. Good memory from me.
Yeah, you can enjoy this one. Taylor, maybe a little less so. This was not yet to the run. Exactly. He's like, I might just have to bail on this. This was not yet the run of MLS Cup Finals loss because they didn't make it to MLS Cup this year. That would be DC United. We got 6 goals to come, a penalty kick shootout, only 6 yellow cards and no red cards, which, as you shall see, is rather bizarre. I will be the video assistant referee in this game. As we wait for the game to start and Taylor to join us, let's just rewind it back. Aleko, I'm curious how you guys felt in that group. DC United had the early glory years, but it leveled out a little bit, and this was a chance to return to glory.
Yeah, the year prior, we were terrible. A lot of mayhem, chaos, locker room, coaching staff, everything top to bottom. So 2004 was definitely a year for all of us to kind of prove ourselves, to prove our worth and our value, especially for the young guys like myself, Brian Carroll, Freddie, Santino, all these young guys that we felt like we belonged on that stage, but we didn't necessarily get the opportunities that we thought we deserved the year before. So, yeah, it was an up and down season, but going into that home stretch, we felt pretty good about ourselves. But then obviously for this game, we lost our captain, Ryan Nelson, and one of our most solid contributors in Dima Kovalenko. So it was a nervy week for sure.
If Dimo's in this game, we would have seen a red card. That's a prediction. I'm just going to make that prediction right now.
You'd see more than a red card.
Yeah. Doyle, you may not have loved either of these teams. Those that don't know, a Metro Stars fan back in those days. How did you
No, I freaking hated these teams. DC United from day one, the most arrogant team, the most arrogant fan base. They won a double every year, each of the first 4 years, and then they went in the tank in 2000 and were terrible for 3 or 4 years. And then they come back and, like Aleko's right, they had like a lot of good young players on this team, but it didn't really feel like it was going to come together. And then out of nowhere, they get Christian Gomez with like 2 months left in the season. And suddenly they have, they just added another potential best player in the league. And then against the Metro Stars in the previous round, it's 0-0 in like the 70th minute, and the Metro Stars are outplaying DC, like clearly the better team. Ernie Stewart, 15 yards offside, somehow breaks the offside. He was 15 yards offside. Like, it was one of the worst up until 2015 MLS Cup. It was one of the worst calls in playoff history. We're gonna have to do a special version of instant replay to get all the angles on that Ernie Stewart goal. So of course they beat the Metro Stars, and I hated the Revs too. With Twellman smiling all the time, and then, they had Ralston, who was a clean cut, good boy, and then they had Dempsey as well with his attitude. I hated these teams. This is misery. There's like the only good part about me being here to watch this stream is I know that Twellman is going to leave it more miserable than I am. That is the only good thing about this for me.
As we wait for Taylor and to kick off this game, and you'll want to be paying attention early on in this one because Shaw Reed Joseph, let's say, puts his stamp on things, literally and figuratively. This was an interesting season in MLS history, Aleko. This was sort of before the expansion boom, before Beckham. To be perfectly honest with you, before I was watching the league, I started really watching after the World Cup in 2006. There were 10 teams in MLS at this time. There were like half the games that we get to see today. What was MLS like in that era?
It was tough league to play in. You saw a lot of foreign players who had incredible resumes that would come into the league and would struggle bad. There were national team guys on the bench. It was really, really tough, competitive. Obviously, with so few teams, it was really tough to even stand out. Like, there was so much parity, and every game was a battle.
I see the standings here. Parity is the name of the game. Columbus Crew, Supporters Shield winners in this season. The New England Revolution They barely made the playoffs. Taylor Twellman barely made the stream. Taylor, Rebs in 2004, before we kick this off, give us a hint. What was that regular season about?
Hold on. Weeby, what have I missed? What is all the absolute nonsense that Aleko has told you?
Aleko's actually not the bad one here. I think I would look to Matt Doyle for all the trash talk.
This is purgatory.
I'm saving it.
Matt. This is absolute purgatory for Matt.
There's no good outcome. There's no good outcome.
No, it sucks for you no matter how you look at it. Either DC United or my Bad News Bears New England Revolution. Pick your poison, one or the other. You must just hate this. How long are we doing this? For 3 hours, right, Matt?
Yeah.
3 hours? Doing it 2 wine bottles full. That's what I got. That's how I'm measuring time.
Well, Aleko's about a bottle and a half already in because he looks like his first dress shirt he's put on in 2 weeks.
He'll sweat through that by the end.
Sorry, Weeby, I had to join in.
Just tell me what 2004 up to this point before this game was like for the Rebs, because you guys, 10 teams in the league, you barely made it in as we see kickstart. We're ready to rumble.
Yeah, interesting team to say the least. You know, we went out and obviously drafted.
Hold on, sorry. Come on. Terry Vaughn even sees this thing. He imitates it. I'm the video assistant referee. They didn't have him in this time, of course. Jaime Moreno, he's reacting exactly as he should. God. I mean, Shaw Reed's like, it's all good. It's all good. Watch out. When we get the replay of this. Oh, come on.
How about Shaw Reed with the Predator look? Dear Lord. I didn't remember that. That's a while
in more ways than one, man, because he just absolutely booted through him. The hair game in this one was pretty incredible, I got to say. Like Benny here with the nice floppy do. Aleko, I'm pretty sure you had that one as well. I mean, what was the message? Did you guys know you're going to come out and send a message, Taylor? Was it on the, sort of on your lips like, hey, come out and get a piece of Jaime early?
No, I mean, Aleko knows this. Anytime you played against us, we were gonna be physical, especially with our fullbacks. You know, for a big part of that time was Joey Franchino and Jay Heaps. You know, at other times today is Rusty Pierce, who was playing as a center back. But I mean, Aleko will say this better than I will. Even in training, I saw we were going to be physical, but there was nothing written on the board saying, "Hey, we need you to 2-foot Jaime Moreno right in the chest." Like 2 minutes into the game, please. That was never on the board.
Technically, just 1 foot, but still, hey, if you're out there watching us on YouTube and Facebook, hit us up, get some comments in there. We will ask the questions that you have of Aleko and Taylor and maybe Doyle as well if you've got that. Aleko, you see this challenge, you think what?
It's a fight. But we were ready to fight. We expected this.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
Taylor said it. New England was designed similarly to how we were. You had a bunch of young domestic guys that were hungry, trying to prove a point. And as you saw with these challenges, that's Clint going in as well.
I love he's just like ho-hum about it. He's like, whatever.
Bite tests as well. Yeah, because, listen, especially in those days, you could get away with tackles like that early and know 100% you're not going to get a red card.
You know, the funny thing is, Aleko, is when you see those two, if VAR was around, we might be playing with 9 guys right now.
100%.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. 100%. I think for sure Shaw Reed's off. Like, ball's nowhere close, studs into the stomach. I mean, I don't think he's on, and then that changes the whole game. But as it is, the tone is set. I was marveling before this that there were only 6 yellow cards. I mean, those didn't get yellow cards, either of those challenges. That's absolutely insane.
Shaw Reed got a yellow, Weed. Shaw Reed got a yellow.
I just missed it on the replay?
They don't.
Reluctantly.
You're off the replay now, Weeby. Come on.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. He got one, but Clint Dempsey didn't get one, and he should have. Absolutely, pal. Absolutely, he should have.
The tone was set even before that, though. I remember even going to the stadium that day, had that nice breeze, a little bit windy. Like, it was going to be a gritty match. It wasn't going to be just pretty ticky-tacky soccer. It was going to be a fight from the jump.
Let's try this. Aleko, I want you to describe this New England team in your mind, in DC's mind, as you guys prepared for this game. What was special about them? What's frustrating about them? What were you focused on? And then we'll flip it, and Taylor, you can take DC after he's done.
Yep.
They were a solid team, no question about it. Obviously, we played them 4 times in the regular season. We knew what they were all about. What's frustrating about them is you knew how they were going to score, but they were so damn good at executing. I thought Taylor and Pat were so good working together. And they got great service from Raleigh, from Marshall Leonard, from whoever was in there. Shuffled in a bunch of different wingers that played for them, but everyone knew.
Who maybe weren't around then. Yeah, Clint Dempsey is playing deep in central midfield. When he came into the league, that's where he was used for the Revs in a 3-5-2.
That's his best position.
8, sometimes as a 10. Aleko says it's his best position. No.
What was the perception of Clint within your group at this time, Aleko, within the league?
So I met Clint.
Josh Gross.
Oh, we got to talk about. We haven't talked about this.
Yeah, hold on. He just winded up. He knew he wasn't getting this ball. It's 1,000% he's not getting this ball.
You guys have to understand who Josh Gross is. You guys have to understand who Josh Gross is. His nickname is Sark. This guy was in the Marines, when he got drafted to DC United. He was already enlisted. The toughest player I've ever seen. And Josh told me, he's like, I don't know how I didn't break his leg. I don't know how he got up. Josh was a little bit shook, damn, he got up after that because I crushed him.
I mean, the ball is nowhere close. That, again, video assistant referee, he's all in Terry Vaughn's ear saying, hey, Terry, you got to come look at the board here, man, or just send him off. Don't even mess around with him. I mean, this is within 6 minutes.
But Shawry earned that one. Shawry earned that one from the jump. He knew.
He did. Turnabout's fair play. All right, the flip side, Taylor. The Revs looking at this DC team. What'd you think?
I mean, they were very dynamic. Aleko knows this. He said it a little bit, but they could come at you in waves. Jaime Moreno was one of the best players, and still is, that I've ever seen, with the ability to attract attention but always know the right ball to play, the right player to play. I always loved playing against DC because you knew exactly what you were going to get, but teams wanted to they wanted to play. I always felt like their back line was a huge weakness. I always felt like it just was. But we always were confident going up against anyone because we knew, Aleko said it, we were kind of simple the way we addressed things. So we looked at DC, but there was a real threat to them. The moment anyone in the central midfield got the ball wide and got it to the front 2, 3, even at times 4 guys going forward, they were as dynamic as any team this league at that time. And quite honestly, when they were full throttle, they were really good. They were one of the more dangerous teams we ever played against.
Imagine both forwards saying, that back line doesn't worry me. We got this.
But in all seriousness, though, Aleko's not saying anything that off. You look at our back line right now. Who's the back line? Avery John, Rusty Pierce, and Jay Heaps. We're playing Pepe Kinsella, Clint Dempsey in the midfield, where Pepe ain't going to defend worth anything. We're basically asking Steve Ralston to run about 9-10 miles a game. So even going up against us, if you knew you could beat our initial line of pressure, and Aleko knows this playing against us 100, if you could beat me, Clint, and Noonan, that initial line, you were off to the races. And if you got Shawry chasing shadows a little bit, then this is a good instance right here. Now all of a sudden the game's open. You could open us very quickly. However, if we turned the ball over and got the other way, that's when you got me, Noonan, 1v1. That was open. But you'll see this all night long. Aleko, Jaime, Christian, guys could get into the open field and get some real space. You can run after our back line. And that was, Aleko, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 04 or 03? We were winning, 2-3-0 at home and lost the game 4-2, right?
Yeah, 03. That was 03. That was my rookie year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was you and
me and Ali Curtis were running up top. And
Ali
Risto.
Curtis, that's right.
Marco Echeverri.
Yeah, So that gave you perspective. I think we'd have to look into like stat sheet, but we gave up more leads than anyone in this league. But we kind of enjoyed it because we knew we were trying to outscore everyone. Clint Dempsey completely changed our team and changed Steve Nickel how he looked at it, and ultimately it forced us playing a 3-5-2.
PK or no? Nah.
Oh,
I'm the VAR here.
Absolutely.
No chance. No chance. Play on. Play on.
I thought that was very clever of Taylor to keep talking over the fluff chance. Like
Yeah.
if we would just
What's happening? I don't see anything.
Not interested at
No
all.
chance. First off, I was offside. Secondly, no penalty.
Guys, the important thing to look at here, and Taylor, you kind of touched on.
Conference championship game. No score yet. The Reds with the best chance so far. Free kick to New England now. Very well attended. As we've been talking about since the top of the show, Greg. Great atmosphere.
We've got a little.
I think I lost Aleko.
Yeah, we got a freeze up. It's bad timing for Aleko too to freeze up here because something good for him is coming very, very soon.
Under pressure. The back pass has to be chested by Raimondo, and then he does well just to scoop it into touch, attacking throw for the Revs. Again, the pressure paying dividends. Heaps pushing forward now. Plays a cross in, away by Carroll.
Oh, there he is.
Hole at the back.
You back?
Will just lump it long to try to push his team out. Rusty Pierce elevates.
I like it. Whatever you do, don't do a restart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to watch this moment. Nice little the touch, just the perfect weight on the touch into space for Aleko. Look at that left foot. Aleko, are you there?
Such a good finish.
It is. I mean, that was Aleko. He was one of those guys who had such a quick shot. Yeah, you're back, Aleko. You just scored. Like that. Like those moments. Aleko was one of the best that I've ever seen in this league. At like, he just shoots quickly. It was like
Yeah, but I'm going to step in here,
so
Doyle.
Go ahead.
Watch where he picks up the ball. See, this is what I'm talking about, right? So, see, he's picking up the ball, where he's in that half a yard where Jay Heaps has to either go, Jaime Moreno and Christian Gomez are running off to each other, so now Rusty Pierce gets baited. This is where they were so dynamic, but Aleko was extremely quick off the mark, and obviously he had a great left foot. That was a great finish. One of the best, I think, playoff goals we saw in 2004. Absolutely.
When he gets back.
And they're going to call the offside. The Revs trying to respond.
You can go watch that on the YouTube channel if you can't stick around or you just want the 15-minute version with interviews from so many of these different players. And Aleko basically said, once it was on my left foot, I knew, and I had that space. There was no doubt in my mind, and that's the sort of confidence it takes to stroke one like that. So they score, Taylor, and what are you guys thinking? Because you hadn't been to an MLS Cup yet, but he did lose the year before in the conference finals.
No,
we went to.
Yeah, we went to 2002, right? So
yeah,
2002,
two years
we
before,
lost at home. And 2003 was a huge disappointment, and quite honestly, that falls on. It was disappointing. I got hurt, so I wasn't available for the playoffs. I broke my foot after getting punched in the face, or kicked in the face with Danny Califf, which was a nasty concussion. We go back to that Aleko finish. Just a great finish inside the post. So 2003 was a real disappointment for us. We went to Chicago. We were what, 75% because we had missed Chris Brown, who was our backup for our starting forwards were Dario Farbro and Pat Noonan. We had injuries. So this year, when Dempsey showed up, we were like, you know what, we've got something. It was a slow year for us, to say the least. It was a slow year for the league. A lot of players didn't score a ton of goals. The leading goal scorer was, if I'm not mistaken, for the year, like 10 or 11 goals.
It was 12, Brian Ching.
I think it was 12 with Ching, yeah.
Yeah, it was
but
Ching.
It was Guevara won MVP with 10 goals, 10 assists. 2004 was the regular season was not good. The postseason was awesome.
So it was a weird year for us as a team because I missed, I think, 7 games with a hamstring or something. Noonan had something, Ralston. So it was a weird year, but Weeby, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. When the playoffs came around, for whatever reason, we always knew the right buttons to push, and we picked it up about, 10, 15%, and it always showed. It showed. I mean, we played well. We played well in this game. You know what I'm saying? we're on the road. We had chances to win this game. You'll see it. But it just came down to penalty kicks and an interesting night. But this was a fun time in the league because we played each other so much. These games turned into a rivalry. Like, we all hated each other. Like Aleko, and he's not on here, so now I can say it. He hated me. He couldn't stand me. Blonde hair, blue guy, blue eyes. He was the Jersey boy, the whole thing. We hated each other. It was amazing. This whole thing was real. Like, there was real animosity. Everybody hated each other. It was kind of fun.
Who was the guy on DC that just got under your skin?
Wow, I didn't really have one because I loved competing against Pecky and Ben Olsen, and I have known each other since we were 14 and all that. We didn't like how sometimes they tried to play too cute sometimes, and we didn't. We thought it was kind of like they thought they were too good. But I respected the absolute hell out of Jaime. I loved Jaime. I honestly didn't hate enough guys on this team. I just never exchanged jerseys. I was just like, whatever. But I remember, my first game against DC, Ray Hudson said in the Washington Post, he's just a poacher. He's not a soccer player. He can't do anything. And I remember nutmegging Brandon Prodeaux, and I toe poked it from 22 yards out, upper 90, and I ran directly. The whole team, we ran right to Ray Hudson, and Ray sat there, and I love this. Ray sat right on the bench, and he went like this. Like, that's what kind of started it for me. But I went to University of Maryland, so DC United and that kind of stuff. But I didn't really hate anyone. I do remember Troy Perkins once. He made a save on me, and he went like this and gave me the Dikembe. And I literally looked at him, and I'll never forget, Noonan was next to me, and Noonan looks at me, and I'm like, did he just give me the Dikembe? And Noonan's like, I think we scored like 4 goals on him or something like 2 games later. And it's just like, that was the kind of stuff that just got us going. But, you know, it was good hatred. It wasn't anything like I had a voodoo doll of Troy Perkins at all.
That was very specific, though, as I was going to say. I mean, that really flowed off this.
It sounds like you kind of did, yeah.
It's not like on the shelf behind me.
Yeah.
I think I hit it.
I cannot believe I'm like watching this game. A central midfield of Cancela, Dempsey, and Shalry, and you guys aren't giving up 8 goals. Oh!
There it was. Walk us through this goal, Taylor. Oh, here's the quiet down. How could anybody have hated Taylor Twellman? How could anybody have hated Taylor Twellman at this time?
This team so much.
Doyle hated this team more than anyone. He hated this team. By the way, shout out to Marshall Leonard.
Yes,
he had 2 assists his entire career. That guy is on the front lines of New York right now fighting COVID-19. That is what that goal is about. It has nothing to do with me scoring goals. So shout out to Marshall Leonard. It was just Weeby, no secret. Get it in the mixer, and I'll try to get on the end of it. It was a great ball in from Marshall.
I mean, it's a perfect ball in from Marshall.
So knowing,
right on the
Taylor, going into this game, knowing they would be without Nelson, knowing that Ezra Hendrickson's the sweeper, the middle of that back line, I mean, your eyes had to light up. You had to think, I'm getting at least one.
Yeah, and you know what's weird, though? I had real good success against Nelly. See, the one interesting thing when you play, and that has nothing to do with it, because you're right, Nelson was one of the best defenders this league ever saw. But Doyle, when you go up against 3, the one in the middle doesn't want to defend. He doesn't.
Mm-hmm. No.
He wants to sweep. So I literally would look at Noonan and say, I'm going to stand on him. And Pat's like, fine. And then Ralston and Dempsey and everybody fill in. So no matter who that one is, they don't want to defend. So as a 9, if you go stand on him and make him defend you, at some point he's going to lose you. And, you know, Ezra lost me right there. But Nelly always preferred playing with 4 in the back. He would tell you that because he knew his jobs were more simplified, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Decent hold-up play. We got a question in here from John Kaluter about Reese's eye. I mean, that thing is – he looks like an MMA fighter. If I remember – I think from the documentary, Reese said it was the round before he got a knee in the face from, like, Edson Buttle?
Yeah, it was Columbus. Because you remember, isn't this the year that Columbus was unbeaten for 19, 20 games going into the playoffs?
Yeah, they
won the Shield, but it was like 7 wins and 12 draws. They had 49
points.
Not a pretty team to watch.
Yeah.
Right, but the best part about that is we beat them at home on Avery John shanking a shot. The best story I'm going to tell you is this. We are literally playing the Columbus Crew at home. It's windy. It's a nasty day. Avery goes to take a shot from about 25, 30 yards out, and everyone on the field and on the bench is going, no, don't shoot it. He shanks it, and it ends up, it ends up in the upper 90. We all turned around. We won that game 1-0. Really? That happened?
Perfect timing for the Avery John close-up.
Yeah, it is. It was the second leg that I think Matt Reese took one right in the square in the heat. Absolutely. I mean, look at it.
I mean, it's ugly. It's one of those where you're like, yeah, that's a black eye, but could he have broken an orbital bone? I mean, that thing looks absolutely gross.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead, Jaime.
Matt Reese and Alecko. Alecko's not on here, and he may not want to talk about it, but Matt Reese is the one that gave Alecko his first real serious concussion that ultimately started his spiraling down. So there was animosity for Alecko and Matt Reese and whatnot. By the way, what a tackle that was.
Yeah, that's a great block.
I mean,
that's Alecko's left foot, too, I'm pretty sure. So you're assuming it's...
And Reese,
I mean, that's
talking
Marshall
about
Leonard.
Talking about Reese coming off the line. Well, I think we're about to see it.
Yeah, we're about to get a little Jaime moment here. Speaking of Reese as well, in this Jaime moment too, because this is
this one.
As it happens, what happens here? He overplays it so much.
This was the book on Matt Reese, and he only got caught like this twice. Matt Reese was the most aggressive keeper in the league by far in terms of anticipating crosses, coming off the line, and playing for what is probably going to happen. The only two people who ever caught him leaning like that were Jaime Moreno and Yuri Djorkaeff. And it was just absolutely knowing the goalkeeper's tendencies and taking a chance that he would be cheating, and he was.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Matt was unbelievable at anticipating, and it was his greatest quality. And you got to remember, you go back to it was an unbelievable performance from Matt Reese in the NCAA Final Four for UCLA. And he literally, I remember watching this thinking, wow, he's all over the shop. Now, ironically, the guy that followed him is in goal for DC United, Nick Raimondo, right? So Nick followed Matt Reese. They're both eerily similar. They're both very good with their feet. They're both very good in anticipating. But when I watched that goal from Jaime Moreno, the first thing I thought of is Rusty Pierce better be on his bike and putting real pressure on Jaime. Jaime's not going to outrun you. He's going to cut you. He's going to make you look silly. But you're 18 yards out. You've got to put pressure on that. And Matt got caught. But I look at that. I tip my cap to Jaime Moreno because I'm like, he did his homework. He did his homework and he pulled it off.
Jaime in this game is just a vision. The little highlights he's got going on, the chain that he's always tucking back in. I mean, when I met him and Marco, I want to say last year of RFK, I got a chance to just sit down with him and Marco for a while, and I think we interviewed him for Extra Time Live way back in the day. By the way, 7 p.m. tonight on Instagram Live. Extra Time Live is back. We're playing trivia. I wrote the questions for Goss and Charlie Davies. But man, just being with Marco and Jaime, not being a fan in those years, but having sort of dug back through all the archives and really started to enjoy and appreciate. It felt like in an empty RFK with those two guys reminiscing. I mean, and both of them. The amount of swagger that Marco had, holy crap.
So today on Banter, John Champion listed his top 5 foreign signings in MLS history, and it came off of the heels of Matt Doyle's article on MLSsoccer.com, and Jaime Moreno was listed, and I joked, and I said he could weigh 250 pounds right now. He'd still have 10 goals, 10 assists, because he was so good between the ears in understanding where he can go to expose you as a backline, whether you played 4, 5, or 3. It didn't matter. Jaime was going to do it. But John Champion told an interesting story. He was absolute dog crap in England. He sucked. He couldn't get used to life. He couldn't get used to, I think it was Middlesbrough. He just struggled. Something about DC, its Latin community, RFK being run down, the whole thing just fit Jaime. But I will put him in the top 10 players this league's ever seen. And honestly, I would watch a lot of Jaime and try to give, not pointers, but just have the conversation with Noonan that, hey, you know, because Noonan was good at drifting. Noonan didn't want to play as a second forward necessarily. And I was like, Pat, you know, honestly, you go find the game and I'll play off of you. And that's where Pat and I kind of clicked. That we like to gamble and drink beer, and I'm trying to take away from the fact that Alecko should have a hat trick right now.
Yeah,
I'm trying to take away that.
He gets his hand up. He sees that spot. That's a great run to pull that center back, and then he's all by himself.
Taylor, young Jaime.
That's Christian Gomez.
Yeah,
yes.
Gomez made a great run.
Taylor, young Jaime, like the best comparison I can find in like today's MLS would be probably ever, because he could do all the center forward stuff.
Yeah.
But he likes to drift. He's able to play between the lines. He's able to actually clear out and get to the wing a little bit. And he's a good athlete, but not an incredible athlete. What made him different was his ability. Like, he couldn't be rushed when he was receiving the ball.
Yeah.
Like, no matter
how bad does it piss you off that he broke his back and had to leave after that trade?
Oh my God! Stop!
Because seriously, think about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this was after his 1 year with the Metro Stars, where he played like 2 games, and he was the most expensive player on the team. Played 2 games, broke his back, and he comes back the next year and leads the line for a team that eventually wins MLS Cup. And this is Jaime Moreno at 60%. He's 60% of the player he had been earlier in his career, and he's still one of the best that this league has ever seen.
Go ahead.
Michelle Morris on Facebook. Taylor, why did you always have your hand bandaged?
2 reasons why. 1, I broke my wrist sliding into second base senior year of high school. 2, I scored a shit ton of goals with my wrist taped, and that kept my wrist taped for the remainder of my life.
There you go. That'll do it. What were you doing sliding headfirst into second, by the way? Come on, everybody.
Don't worry about it. What
were you doing?
First off, I was safe. Secondly, I stayed in the game and scored the run. Stop. 2, that's most important. 3, we lost the game 5-4.
Oh,
you know exactly who Taylor was? He was like Craig Biggio or like Dustin Pedroia, one of the like scrappy little opposite field single middle infielders who's always yapping and who always like hustle. He ran out every routine ground out to first base. He ran as hard as he could to first base.
Come on, he's from St. Louis, Doyle. You got to respect the game there.
Oh, that's right. Play the game the right way. Play the game the right way.
I was a catcher. He's definitely the guy that I was throwing down the middle finger for. I'm like, hey, it's been a long game.
You gave this sign 3 or 4 times today.
Yeah, like,
absolutely.
Come on now.
Taylor.
I would be living for the moment you tried to steal second. For it.
Taylor, as a batter, 100% always took the first pitch. Always took the first pitch just because it's the right thing to do. You got to work the count.
Absolutely, especially if I'm batting leadoff.
I need to know though, Taylor. Was it a double or was it a stolen base? Why were you sliding into second?
Single into a double.
Man, the head first sliders into second. I always liked
It's the dumbest thing ever. It's the dumbest thing. Why would you ever slide head first? So stupid.
Never.
Ooh.
Never.
I'll tell you right now.
Only back into a bag.
Avery might have got away with one.
He had an arm on the shoulder, right?
He did.
So I want to go back to something that you said a little earlier, Taylor, that I thought was interesting, which was the effect that Clint Dempsey had on Stevie Nicol and the effect that he had on the team. So just kind of take me through, like, before, after, entry into the Revs, days of Clint.
Yeah, actually, Matt Pence did a great article. I know you guys saw it on The Athletic about Clint Dempsey through all the stages of his career. And when Clint showed up, he was bold, he was brash on the field, but in the locker room, he was very shy. You know, and shy's the wrong word because he's not a shy guy. But part of the reason why he was shy is I wouldn't shut up. Jay wouldn't shut up. Pat Noonan wouldn't shut up. Shaw Ree wouldn't shut up. You had so many guys and personalities that he came into it. And then we come to know that Clint's fit in perfectly. He had a bold and brash personality. The problem was at this time, he didn't have a position. He just didn't. So we go out and sign Pepe Kinsella, and then Clint shows up, and Stevie and Paul are probably looking at each other going, oh, no. We got two of the same guys for that position. Stevie looked at him, and rightfully so, and said, he needs to be on the field. We've got to find a way to get him on the field. So how do we do it? And the way our team was built at this time, because you remember 2005 is when we drafted Parkhurst. Stevie Nickel right here, he literally looked at this field, this formation, and said, if Clint's going to be starting for us, we need to get a guy. This game here ultimately led us to drafting Michael Parkhurst. Because Parkhurst then would slide into the midfield, slide into the middle of the three in the back, and then you knew Andy Dorman, Jeff Lorenowitz, all those guys come in later. They fit it. But Clint had to be on the field, and Stevie's best way to doing that is saying, let's cloud the midfield. The only thing, and I never was one that as a player, I never talked about tactics with a coach because it doesn't matter. In Germany, if I would have done that, I would have been killed. So my younger days as a pro, it's like, no, just do whatever job I tell you, just do it. But I wonder, this kind of, if Stevie looks back and says, did it put Steve Ralston in the best spot to succeed? Because he now becomes a wingback. Like, we haven't seen a ton of Ralston. I mean, you guys have been sitting here with me. We're 31 minutes
like
in.
Entry balls down the sideline, like trying to.
Yeah,
not what you want him to do.
No, Stevie needed to be involved as much as possible, and on the ball. So, but Clint single-handedly changed this. And for the better, but where Clint is right now, we didn't need Clint there. And we figured this out, 2005, we figured it out. That needed to be Shaw Ree, and Clint needed to get the hell out of there. But this was a good team. And our league now has grown exponentially. I get it. Shaw Ree was a winner, guys. Shaw Ree's, if I'm picking a team to win in 2020, players in their prime, Shaw Ree's on my team.
Yeah,
you and David Goss both.
For sure.
Yeah,
he's a Shaw Ree truther through and through, man. He loves him.
Yeah, he's good, man. He was good. We got him older, but
which of those Revs teams was the best? 2006?
It's a great question. A lot of people would say 2005, 2006. With comparison to where the team was, and you talk about chemistry and everything, 2007 was our team.
Really?
Yep.
What was the difference?
Because you got to 2006, Clint didn't want to be there anymore. And then what really trumped it all was then I was starting to get offers. Clint got offers. Shaw Ree got offers. So the dissension in the team was like, where are we going to go with this one? The best team? 05 and 06. But the way everything came together, Andy Dorman was spectacular in 2007. And quite honestly, Stevie Nickel starting Wells Thompson over Andy Dorman. A lot of us internally were asking ourselves, what? Andy Dorman was an all-star. Like, he needs to be playing. And there's, reasons why that didn't happen. But it's a good question, Matt. 2002 was was the worst team in an MLS Cup final, bar none, not even close to it. We had to win the last 6 games of the year to get into the playoffs, and we ended up winning the Eastern Conference with a losing record. That says it all, right? We weren't that good. Bob Bradley's Chicago Fire in 02 was an unbelievable team, great team. If I'm not mistaken, I think they started 10 World Cup players or 9, some ridiculous stat where you're like, really? and we, beat them in the playoffs or whatnot. But this is the best team, I think, was, 05, 06, one of those talent-wise. 07 was our best opportunity because everyone was in sync.
Moreno tried to chip it into the box, deflected off a Revolution player, and then Cancelo plays it forward to Taylor Twellman.
An interesting one is, I wonder for, by the way, I know Mike Peckey's sitting at home watching this, and he's going to claim he stopped that, but I know Mike didn't. I know he didn't. Mike, just so you know, I went over to your side about 10 to 11 times, and every time I went over there, I would just quit. Just kidding. Mike, I hope you enjoy yourself at home right now.
Well, I guess it's just me versus you right now, Taylor. Everybody else is dropping out here. Oh, Doyle's back, thankfully. Hoping to get Alecko back, working hard behind the scenes to get him back in here as he stops that free kick and shrugs.
He's asking the same. He's talking to Wi-Fi right now. That was the same reaction to his Wi-Fi at the house.
Exactly.
I think the problem is everybody in the world happens to be on the internet at the same time right now. So, not much else.
How are
to
you
do
guys
in
doing, by the way? How are you guys doing? All right.
It's weird times, man. I think everybody in New York is trying to do their part, at least from what I've seen, and that means not going out a lot, and that means trying to stay isolated and keep social distance and just follow the guidelines from the CDC and the WHO, and support essential workers, support healthcare professionals. It's a miserable nightmare, but we're all going through it together.
I think miserable nightmare is a good way to put it. And I think
I will say this, though. Hasn't this been fun, Weeby? Has this been fun for you? Because I mean that, though. Like, going back and watching all these MLS classics and stuff, for someone that didn't grow up as an MLS fan but then got into it, it's got to be interesting for you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's my favorite part of some of the content we're doing is it gives me an excuse to just kind of go back and drop myself into the past. And it's much better just rather than just watching it, having an opportunity to hear guys who were in it talk about the league in those days, the way that I feel like I can talk about the league from about 2008 on. But guys who have this huge sort of like cachet of memories and feelings and relationships and anecdotes. I mean, it really kind of brings you into where the league was at this time. I mean, that face right there. I did my all load 11. I probably should have thrown you on that, Taylor, because the face is, like I said before you were able to jump on, it's punchable.
Dude,
it's punchable.
It's absolutely punchable. The problem is it's still not going to do any damage to it. When you got it, you got to flaunt it, Weeby.
That's true.
I mean, look at it.
Can I ask you, Taylor? I was looking at the stats. I was
looking
at your numbers.
What sort of product do you use on your eyebrows, by the way?
Yeah, no kidding. Definitely some wax in there. I was looking at the numbers. In 02, you had 23. In 03, you had 15. This 04 season was the only season until concussions in 08 until you went under double-digit goals. Why did that happen in this?
I ripped my hamstring. Completely tore my hamstring and missed about 6, 7 games.
Sliding into second base. He was sliding into second base
absolutely.
at RFK Stadium.
If I could tape my hamstring, man, I would have done it. This is, by the way, this is amazing. 38 minutes in, and this is the first time I've seen Steve Ralston in the final third, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doyle,
I mean, that was a 3-5-2, right? And that was the thing. When you guys were on the front foot and he could get forward, it was unstoppable. It's like an avalanche. But in games like this, he was arguably your best player, and he never had all that. I don't want to say never, but he often didn't have as much influence in games like this.
No, he was. Oh man, Doyle, you appreciate it, but I'll tell you, Weeby, Ralston was something else. Ralston was something where you were just like, in the heat of the moment, he's one of the more competitive SOBs I've ever met in my life. But he was a guy where he could get you out of trouble. He could play multiple positions. He was a huge part in the 2006 World Cup qualifying cycle. He was a good player, man. Someone very underappreciated, to say the least.
Taylor, I got to ask you.
I've been banging the drum for both he and Jaime via my Soccer Hall of Fame vote to get in. Because I think by getting those guys over the line, at least Jaime, you open up the possibility and you give sort of a frame of reference and a precedent for people to say, okay, you didn't have to have 100 caps with the national team to have affected our soccer culture and our league and the game in this country. I mean, both of these guys are just absolute giants, and I hope someday they get recognized in that way. And even without watching Ralston live in his prime years, I mean, I've gone back and rolled through the highlights, talking to people like you, Taylor, anybody I can get from the era, just sort of being like, hey, give me your insight onto this. And everybody says that. There's nobody that has anything other than incredible player, incredible competitor, deserves to be there, Steve Ralston.
Yeah. I mean, you guys know my feelings on the Hall of Fame. It's a complete farce on so many levels regarding certain things, and it's disappointing because now it's got real history. You've got a league that's been here for 25 years. But I did a piece, and you guys remember it, it was a U.S. men's national team friendly. There's 9 foreigners in the Hall of Fame right now, so don't tell me that Jaime Moreno can't be in the Hall of Fame, that David Beckham can't be in the Hall of Fame. It's just, it's disappointing to me because the voters, 1, don't take it serious. 2, they obviously don't when Steve Cherundolo doesn't get in his first year being, the guy had a testimonial for a German club, for God's sake, right? So yeah. I just thought the Hall of Fame bothers me, and I don't care about the Hall of Fame because Jaime Moreno and Steve Ralston are already in it, in my opinion. And when you talk to your peers, and it's unequivocally yes, what the heck are we doing with it? Weeby, I think your piece is good on it because we need more people critical of the situation in order to change it.
I got to tell you, I love Newton's hair in this game. And this
I just
era
love
in
this
general.
combo play, like this combo play from you guys right here, and you could see that instinct. Like as soon as you cross, like Noonan coming this way, and like he knew you were going the other way, and you were just going to stretch them, and he just lofted that into space. Like so many plays like this over the years, it wasn't the most complex thing in the world, but it was quick.
No, it wasn't.
And it was to the point, and it was tough to stop.
But you know what's funny, Doyle? It's because Pat Noonan was the assistant coach with Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane played eerily similar to that.
Oh yeah,
he wasn't gonna outrun you.
No.
He wasn't going to do anything, but if you were on the same wavelength with him between the ears and your movement was clean and precise enough, Robbie was another one. He just opened up the game, and yet you looked at him, you're like, how are you not my accountant? You're 5'8", 160 pounds. You can't run by anyone. You have no muscle on you. And yet both, technically, he was one of the best forwards I ever saw. And Pat and him really connected. Pat would talk about the game, and Robbie, they would see it the same way. So I always found it fun when I used to see those guys, and I'd ask Robbie questions and hear him talk, and Noonan, would kind of look at me and goes, you would love this guy. I'm like, it's like, he was better. I'm not saying I'm never going to say I'm on that level, but we saw the game the same way, and Pat considers that one of his highlights of really working with Robbie and seeing that.
When did it become clear for you that you weren't going to be the guy who was making that play, that you were going to be the guy making the run to score the goal? Was that just like 4-year-old Taylor with so much energy, he's just going to run as fast as he can?
Yeah, it's funny. That was sophomore year of high school. I'll never forget it. So after every high school season, we'd sit down. My dad would say, what do you think? And you guys will laugh because you saw this. I used to be the guy that thought he was Jaime Moreno. Step overs and pullovers and all that. And so at the end of the year, my dad says, so what do you want to do? And I go, Dad, I love scoring goals. And he goes, then why the F are you dribbling in the corner? Just like that. I was 16. And I go, Dad, he goes, if you want to score goals, go stand in front of the goal. Go get yourself in front of the goal and see what happens. That's when it clicked. But then as I got to this level...
what do we think? BC's not having it. BC doesn't love it. I need another angle. I trust BC.
I want you two to tell me, in 2020, is this a handball? When you see the
From
replay,
that,
I want you to tell me.
The distance is close. The distance is close. The arm is up. It's the left hand.
It's a handball. His arm's out a little bit.
I didn't get a great look at that. You know, if I was up in the booth, I'd be asking for my AVARs to give me a better angle. Come on, guys. We need
Weeby, this is standard depth. This is the best view you're going to get.
And here comes Ramondo. Ralston Ramondo. That's a good matchup. And this is wild.
Extremely important to remember.
Oof.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
All right, so Taylor, continue that story you were saying about when you thought you were Luis Figo.
No,
trying to dribble guys in the corner.
I was playing in Germany, and remember the old German playmaker, Spielmacher, Thomas Hassler?
Mm-hmm.
Remember him? He was like 5'6", 5'7", 90 World Cup, 94. He was 36 at the time. He's playing for 1860 Munich. And he's on his last leg. And there's a number 9 up front, Martin Max. And Matt, long story short, the guy just scored goals, and he kept it real simple. And I remember watching Hassler and him after training, and he literally, I could see Tomas saying, 25 yards in, I don't care. Everything in the middle, give me the ball. Knock it off, get around, turn around. Paul Mariner comes to the team. He sees me try to do a couple things in midfield, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to score as many goals as I can. He said, then we got to get from point A to point B, and that's not going to help us if you're messing around in the midfield. I fought it. I was like, no, this and that. And then finally, I got it, and I understood it. The quicker we get from point A to point B, the quicker I'm going to score goals, right? The irony of this is Bruce Arena in the 2006 World Cup team told me I was too simple when I played. And I used to say that to Steve Nicol and Paul Mariner, and Stevie and Paul would look me straight in the eye and say, don't change. Don't change. You're doing fine. You're scoring goals. The team's winning. Don't change. But when Bruce, Glenn Myernick, Kurt Arnolfo, when we would assess my games, and more often than not, I didn't start a lot for Bruce, but even when I came in, it was, you need to do more. So think of that. I went from, so there was and I just felt like, you know what? It's working with the club level. Why would I change? And if you remember, late 05, early 06, it clicked with the national team. I didn't do anything different. I just was playing with the better team. I was playing in World Cup qualifiers, and then I was playing before the World Cup. So it really clicked. You got it. The best players in the world know their limitations. It doesn't matter where they play, what league they're in. The ones that know their limitations and maximize what they're really good at, that's that guy right there, Clint Dempsey. He knew what he was good at. Now, he was also good at being brash and trying things, but at the international level and at Fulham, did you guys see Clint Dempsey try a lot of shenanigans? The answer is no. He just didn't. Because he knew at that level, he's not going to get away with it. And so I just, when I now being an announcer and seeing guys that play the game at the highest level, they know what they're really good at, and damn, they're good at it. And they know when they're not. And they know when to try things and when not to. And I think that just, to answer your question long-winded, that's where my mentality was.
Yeah.
It's crazy to watch these old games. Not really crazy, but it's understandable. And you start seeing all these faces pop up, whether it's Ernie Stewart or, it's Jay Heaps or whoever it might be, Reese, Ezra, all these guys that are now either assistants or executives, or in your case, kind of front and center on the broadcast side. To sort of try to remember that the guy that you're like, oh yeah, the assistant coach for XYZ team, was big. He was a star for a long time in this league. I think it's easy all these years on, with sort of the difficulty that sometimes we have to go back and really experience these moments to remember that. I mean,
absolutely.
Is Shawry coaching Granada right now?
No, I think he declined the option. I think, if I'm not mistaken. He needs to get back in the league.
Yeah.
He needs to get back in the league. But look at it. Pat Noonan's turning himself into a really good coach. Jim Curtin would tell you that right now. Ben Olsen's been around forever. I also think it just shows you that there was a little, this time, Andrew and Matt, there was, the league wasn't flourishing. You had teams folding. And so there's a lot of pride in that generation after the 94 World Cup and what this league has turned into. And that team got a ton of notoriety, but the nuts and bolts of this league, a lot of it is that generation afterwards. It is.
Yeah.
A lot of guys that rolled up their sleeves during some difficult times.
It felt like a cause. It felt like we were all gonna put our shoulder into it together. And I'm talking for the fans here as well. And to go from that, as Taylor said, teams folding to where we are now, it's been a journey. It's been a journey. Those were the bad, good old days.
There's a cause now, too. Of course, we're doing this because of COVID-19, the coronavirus, and the quarantine and pandemic that's going on. In case you haven't been paying attention, MLS Unites is the program that the league has put together this week. It's all about inspiring kids. I know a little something about that, keeping my young one busy. He can't color between the lines just yet, but we're trying to give him his time to do his thing. Go to MLSsoccer.com. We've got a bunch of things for your kids to do. We have resources for you, extra challenges for parents if you're trying to stay on top of things as well. MLS Unite's here to help. All the clubs are doing their part to keep all of you engaged, healthy, safe, sane. MLSsoccer.com/MLS-Unites. Hashtag to inspire kids. Go see what's happening around the league and get some fun activities as well. And, of course, do your part. Social distancing, as Matt said. Follow the CDC, WHO, all the experts out there, the physicians, and the people that are studying this virus, helping keep us safe, of course. We got more to come this week. MLS Classics Remix, Cascadia Clash on Friday, going back to 2014.
What a game that is.
Portland Timbers, Seattle Sounders, Clint Dempsey in a different era. That should be a really, really fun one. 4 p.m. Eastern. These are all on YouTube and Facebook. You can watch them at MLSsoccer.com. And this is a screenshot I took when I watched the abridged match to prepare for this. This was one of the lone screenshots I took because, man, Greg Lawless looking like mid 2000s Greg is a sight to behold.
This is his first game in the broadcast booth. This
What?
is his first game in the broadcast booth. That's according to Brad Feldman, the longtime announcer for the Revs. And can we get that back? Can we see that earring?
Yeah,
that
can we
Greg
get the hoop up? Yeah. Oh,
Look
yeah.
at that.
And they definitely, the way he's positioned, they got him turned right into that, just for
That's
full
definitely a man
exposure.
who had a pinky ring as well, for sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. Absolutely. And then, he'd have a chain on his wallet too. But the best part about this, about Greg and Brad disagreed on 98% of whatever they said. And it was genuine. It was real. Now, you guys don't find that surprising at all because Greg is a Lawless and it runs in the family.
It does.
But I will say, Greg was underrated. Greg was underrated as an analyst. He was good because he was willing to say something. He was willing to have an opinion. Too often you hear guys, we hear these local broadcasts and stuff. Too often they want Greg would, no problem. He's doing a Revs game. He'd be like, I just don't think Taylor had a good game. I loved it. He was so Boston. There was something about that I loved. Greg was good. The earring, the pinky ring, the nipple rings, the wallet chain, whatever else he had. Brad Feldman with whatever was on top of his head. Needless to say, that was a screenshot that I'll remember forever.
Aleko's back.
You have 45 minutes of Taylor talking trash with no opportunity to respond. Man. This is
what I miss, guys. What I miss.
We can't relive it all. We'll give you the second half to figure it out.
Can I apologize to the people? Can I apologize to the people? I'm sorry to leave you.
They actually enjoyed it.
They
actually enjoyed it, Aleko.
Better this way. Taylor got all the airtime.
Yeah, we did. No surprise, right? Shocking. They could have done this with me by myself. Aleko, I said something, and I wanted to ask you when you came back. Your concussion from Matt Reese, it was after this?
Yeah, it was the next year, 2005.
So it was the beginning of 2005, like one of the early season games.
June,
right?
June 2005.
June. Yep. Okay. Because that was after the January camp where you got called in, right? You got called into the to the national team.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I remember that. I think he's gone.
Lost him again.
Oh, that New Jersey
weird.
connection is struggling pretty hard here. Brooklyn, stand up. We're good to go here.
Don't ever raise the roof again. I know Jay Heaps is
Did I
playing
do
in
that?
this game, and he used to. Hey, first off, Jay Heaps used to always raise the roof, and we'd all look at him and go, "Really? Like, it's not. This isn't Duke." But if you do it now in 2020, we can't. Come on, Weedy, you can't raise the roof.
You know what? You were supposed to let that go. You were supposed to pretend like you didn't
Weedy's
see
an
that
old
one.
soul.
I've become an older soul over the last 2.5, 3 years. It's been I've aged mentally for sure. Maybe not physically
By the way,
as much.
we
mentally.
all have over the last 4 weeks. We all have.
Yeah. You know, you guys with the kids. Oof.
Oh yeah. Well, I just left. I was like, I'm out of here. See you guys. I'm a really good dad.
I can hear him in the other room.
Good luck,
I'm sure my wife is listening, and she's like, okay, when I hear him not talking, I'm sure he'll be back to help me very, very soon. Very, very soon. I want to talk about Jay Heaps. Jay Heaps is on my bench for my all-loathed 11 because I just know people hated playing against him, and if people hate playing against him, fans love rooting against him, too, on opposing teams. What was Jay Heaps like as a player?
Wait, let me just interject right here. You know who loved playing against Jay Heaps? The 1999 UConn men's basketball team.
Oh, my
Anyway, please continue. Go
I
ahead,
think
Taylor.
a lot of people
you
in
have
this
the floor
era,
again.
I think a lot of people mostly know Jay Heaps if they got to the league around the time that I did as a head coach rather than sort of a lockdown outside back.
First off, Jay Heaps should have been on the Revs 25-year anniversary all-time best 11. Okay, that's fact, not opinion. The guy played over how many games? Over 250 games for your club. He's played in over 300 games in MLS. Ironically, Jay was a All-American and really good in college as a center forward. But then, as you can see, and I tell Jay all the time, that position wasn't meant for him. So Jay was the best teammate. Everyone hated playing against them. I think part of that, and I'm not saying this as a joke, it's true, is the Duke Blue Devils. You know, a lot of people didn't like Duke. You know, it was what it was. Jay never shut up. He was always talking. That husky in your video right now, Doyle. But Jay was the best, and I'll tell you, Jay still can't watch it. It still leaves a pit in his stomach, but he put his hand up and said, I'm taking a penalty in 2006. Absolutely. Now, I tell you that story.
Who's this?
Because there's going to be a huge
Teammates.
part of that coming in.
Good friends.
Book him. Book him. I don't know how you
All
can't
ball.
believe this.
All ball,
yes.
guys.
Oh, boy.
Get into it.
I have no
Aleko,
idea if you guys can hear me, but all ball.
We can hear you. Aleko, I just have one question. Did you spray paint your hair onto your head?
It was a natural helmet in those days, and it kind of evolved a little bit.
Oh,
By the
my
way,
God.
all
ball?
Yeah.
Awful.
Come on.
Horrid.
Soft.
Dude,
Soft.
by the way, I'm texting Pepe in Uruguay right now, and you got to send him his leg back. What the hell was that? Look at that spray
And my
job
boy
on
Marshall
top of your
tried to
head,
get
dude.
into me.
What is
Marshall
that?
Leonard was my college teammate, took me around on my recruiting visit when I went to UVA, was like a big brother to me. And when he got into my face, I was like, seriously, dude? Like, we're family, man. But, hey, man,
No,
everything
you're
was
not family.
put to the side.
Not on the field. Not between those lines.
Yeah, Kinsella's having a hard time here. He's
He
laboring a
should,
little bit.
dude. His legs in the middle of the 15th row at RFK.
So since we haven't had you,
just like when the
Aleko,
game starts, in the first few minutes of the second half, you're not going to get a red. That's if there's ever a green light to go in, that's the time to do it.
Gotta know how it's
This is
going to
why
be
I hated
refereed.
DC United so much, man. There's like 15 guys who played like that on this team.
So tell me how DC is feeling at halftime, Aleko. You guys go up, then it's tied. You go up, then it's tied. What's it feel like in the locker room from Peter, from the group?
we felt good. Do you want me to talk about my goal since you guys booted me off?
Oh my gosh.
Goal?
Hey, if you want, look, striker's going to striker, so go back to that if you want.
Listen. At the end of the day, we knew we were in for a 12-round fight for this one. Obviously, we were going back and forth. There were a lot of momentum swings in this match, but we just knew we needed to score again. We needed to score again. That was always the goal. But going into halftime, we were doing what we were doing. There was no drastic change. I think it was tactical genius by Peter Novak with the way we played, with the 3-5-2. Josh Gross giving us so much on that flank. We just knew it was a matter of time until we broke them down, but New England kept answering every single time.
We have Caden Albanese on YouTube asking if you guys remember any memorable trash talk from this game. Who were the talkers? Like, you're on the field. Who are you going to hear from the most?
Ben Olsen is literally on the screen as you're asking who the talkers are.
We talked to Ben. We talked to Ben on Kick Around today at noon, and he's, God love him, Ben Olsen, one of the best characters in this league's history.
For me, it was Jay Heaps and Rusty Pierce, and those guys would always be like up my butt, like trying to, egg me on, tackle me, pull, whatever it was. And then the second you touched them, they were the first ones to like cry foul. Avery John, on the other hand, was like a silent assassin. I was like trying to bait him into talking, and he wouldn't say a word, and he would thump me on the next play. And I'm like, man, I don't want to mess with that guy.
Flip it around, Taylor. Who on DC was just yapping?
Ben's always talking, right? Ben's a little old school in that, so he was always talking.
He told us that's how he stayed engaged in games. That he figured out a couple years into being a pro that the more he talked, the more he gesticulated, the better he felt mentally, the more locked in he felt.
What people don't understand watching this is Ben Olsen's career was already over, and he came back. How many ankle surgeries did he have coming into this? So the fact that he resurrected himself into having any kind of career is one of the more remarkable. I mean, you could tell now when he walks. He walks on the outside of his ankles. He's got like no feet anymore. And I say that jokingly and kind of serious. But what he did came back, and that was it. On our team, Aleko's being generous.
What a touch,
Shaw
Taylor.
Reed, blind squirrel, dude, blind squirrel. Shaw Reed never shut up. Jay Heaps never shut up. Dempsey never really talked until you talked to him, and then it was on, and then he never let it go. Steve Ralston never talked. But Heaps, Shaw Reed, that kind of thing. On this DC United team, like Mike Pecky never really talked. He'd be like, Taylor, stop diving, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't like real trash talk. Ben would trash talk 100%. And you know who you're going to laugh? Peter Novak. I'd be on the sideline because Peter knew I spoke German. He would talk trash to me in German. And I would literally look at him and be like, I think it was one of these games, I told him to go smoke a cigarette and sit down in German. And he kind of chuckled because he knew exactly, like he'd smoke 2 packs a day. But Peter would talk trash. Like there was one of those.
We were missing our biggest talker though, Taylor. Dima was our talker.
Dima. I was just going to get there.
He's the best.
There was nobody talked more, and he hated it too. If you called him stinky, right? Aleko, you remember that? Like you would call him so. Dima would be all up in this, and you just look at him and be like, "Shut up, stinky." And he'd like.
Watch this, by the way. Look at Avery John here, by the way. Gosh,
Oh, yeah.
Right,
he's in for it.
Oh, yeah. I remember I got into a Shaw Reed here, and Shaw Reed punched down on my forearms, and I swear I thought I broke my arm. Man. That dude's made out of titanium.
We have another question that came in for you guys on Facebook from Thomas Medina. Shout out to Thomas. Thanks for joining us today. He says, what current player this era of MLS would have the biggest effect in the early 2000s? Like, who would you bring back, let's say, if you had to make the choice, both from a sort of a personality standpoint, certainly on the field, but who would both fit into this era of the league but also be wildly successful?
That's a good one. I'll let Aleko go first since I haven't shut up.
The guy for me that I've loved, but he's not in the league anymore, is Miguel Almiron. For me, Miguel Almiron was like a faster version of Christian Gomez. And guys like that were so successful in terms of breaking players down, being cerebral, but also physically being able to run guys as well, which you needed at this time. So Almiron for me would be the guy.
The interesting thing to me would be seeing what a Harris Medunjanin would have been 20 years ago. Because now he's a 6. Now he just sits in front of the back line and cleans up and dictates. Would he have played a little further upfield 20, 25 years ago? Aleko's shaking his head.
Nah.
I mean, it's one of the things...
We had guys like that played in the league that couldn't cut it.
Yeah, but like even Lubos Kublik, you know, he was that central midfielder. They actually moved him back to sweeper. So it's interesting to see the way teams use their best passer of the ball, how it's evolved over the last 20, 25 years.
Tactically, defensively, the game has evolved so much where nowadays every single team knows how to pack it in. They just know. Every team is so sound defensively, whereas in these days it was more like, we're going to play to our strengths, and it's our strengths against your strengths. And it made the game a lot more fun, to be honest with you.
How did Christian Gomez change DC United this year, Aleko?
So I tell this story all the time.
He was good.
But when Christian joined our team, I'm not kidding, his first week of training, he was awful, terrible. And we were all like, who is this guy? Why'd they sign him? Like, we don't need him. And there was just one training session where it all just clicked. And I think he scored 5 goals in an 11-a-side. And we were like, oh, it must have been a fluke. And from that moment on, every day he got better and better and better and more comfortable. And he changed the entire dynamic of the team. With me and Jaime's incredible, like Taylor said, but Jaime and I complemented each other very well in that my strengths are very different from Jaime's strengths. So if you're going to spend all your energy shutting down Jaime, you're going to have openings for me. If you want to stop me from stretching the field, Jaime's going to find those pockets. Christian was like a hybrid. He could do everything. And such a humble, hardworking guy, so he totally put us over the top to make us a championship team.
It's weird, Aleko, you guys kind of had a lot of 1 to 18 month. I mean, how is this not a red card, by the way? Wait till you see.
Name off got a piece of you.
Oh, a piece of me. First off, to go through my rear end, you've got to do a lot. You've got to do a lot.
Have you seen what you guys have been doing to us?
Get on. I have 2 honey baked hams hanging onto my hips. If you're gonna go through this, what the F is that?
He got you. And you know you're getting it too.
Oh, you feel it coming too, because you can hear him heavy breathing. He's pumping, he's running behind you, and you're like, oh no. So right before it comes, Aleko knows this, playing the position. As long as you lift just a little bit so your leg's not planted, you know it's a hard hit and you move on. But if that leg's planted, then you're in trouble. Yeah,
Taylor,
of course I was.
You're asking for it, man. You're wearing shorts that aren't the correct size. You've got the tape on your wrist. You don't have a wrist injury. That didn't show up on the injury report. So
it never did.
Taylor was auditioning for ESPN during the Eastern Conference Final, basically. So,
yes,
he deserved it.
Yes,
Taylor,
absolutely.
are you one of those custom pants guys? Are you like a Roger Clemens where you have to go to the tailor? And
I have to. Why are you asking me, Weeby? I have to.
Yeah. I mean, you went with the honey baked hams comment, so I had to ask.
Well,
I remember.
This team's interesting, right? So Aleko can go by jeans. They're 32-24s, right? Pat Noonan can go by jeans. They're 32s, 26s, right? So you can go buy those clothes that way off the rack. I can't, just because my waist may be a 33, but the hams are asking for a little bit more.
I saw Roger Clemens on the plaza in Kansas City one time when I was a kid, and I was like, this dude's from a different planet. This guy's he's an alien. This should not be possible at these proportions. Uh-oh.
Oh. No, but I was going to ask, Aleko, before that tackle, I was going to ask a serious question. It seemed like DC was always good for the, 12 to 18-month wonders. Luciano Emilio was unreal that first year. And then he fell off the face of the earth in the it was where'd he go? You know, like Christian Gomez was better than just 1 year, but
his best 11 in 3 straight years.
Yeah, I know.
Years.
So Gomez doesn't fit that, but
Yeah, I
Gomez
wouldn't
fell
put
off.
Gomez in that category. But you're right.
Gomez
there were a
was
bunch of guys.
There was a bunch of guys though, but Gomez didn't fit in that. It just seemed like they always found this guy that got hot, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later or 18 months later, you're like, where the hell did he go?
Yeah, to be honest with you, because I know I went through it with this year was kind of my breakout year, and then injuries took a toll. But the way we played was pretty physically demanding. So guys like Jaime, who are the more cerebral players, they would have that sustainability. But for the rest of us that were like kind of grinding and bumping and bruising, like it took a toll physically, man, to play this way.
So, Weeby, to answer your question, naturally I was going to say the Ozzy Alonsos of the world. You know, Ozzy Alonso would have been very good in this league. See, that's where we get in trouble, is when these guys are, like Ben Olsen's playing wide left, Alecko's dropping in the midfield, Jaime's playing wide right. This is where this team was a disaster to play against if they got into any rhythm where the front 4 or 5 guys, I mean, look at the spacing. Look at where Jaime is. Yeah. Alecko's coming here. That's impossible for Rusty. Rusty knows he has to take him down because he's left in no man's land.
Last man, red card, VAR.
No, get out of here, dude. You were at half field. You couldn't run and catch that ball.
The one thing I'll say, the reason we could play that way, Peter Novak had an exercise that we did in training, and it was just 1v1 in a half-field space, and you were matched up with one guy, and you could only strip your guy of the ball, and it was a possession game. And we would play this for minutes and minutes on end. It was the most physically demanding exercise ever, but it was torture where whoever your guy was, like, it just gave you so much more accountability and responsibility of no teammates are going to help me. It's me against one other guy. And we played in games sometimes where if we were down, Peter would say 1v1, where whoever you were up against, that's your responsibility. Don't point fingers. Get the better of your man, and that's how we get back into the game. So we felt really comfortable playing that way.
Yeah, it was that. I remember doing that in Germany for the first time, and I remember when Peter brought it to the national team as the assistant coach under Bob. I pulled Peter aside. I said, "There's no way you played this well." And he would look at me and go, "What?" I go, "There's no way you followed one guy around the field the entire time." I mean, Peter was one of the best 10s this league's ever seen. But he was so good at, like, wherever you went and the hole was on the other side, Matt, he'd find it. And Peter was so good at that. But that drill or that practice would come up, and I'm like, Peter, there's no way you did this as a player. There's no way. The other player we beat for you, Bradley Wright Phillips. Bradley Wright Phillips. I would have liked to have seen in this time.
So we have a bunch of questions right now for you guys.
Hold on a sec, Weeby. I want clarity on that one. What about BWP makes you curious about that?
The pace he played at, Matt. The pace he played at, the ability to do work on both sides. I just think as he evolved after Henri left, I think it would have worked in this. He was okay playing a little bit of a more physical game, but he was so active, his movement. I think he would have been very successful in this.
We've got a bunch of people in the comments complimenting that old school RFK bouncing stands, Barra Brava atmosphere. Jim Nairn wants to know on Facebook what's the toughest stadium to play in during this era, but just more generally, Alecko, I'm curious about what it felt like to play in your first professional club in this stadium in front of these fans.
Our fans were amazing, man. They brought so much energy and passion in every game. The atmosphere at RFK was great because this is the era where there weren't soccer-specific stadiums. So RFK was uniquely our own, even though it was a revamped football stadium. But we
baseball stadium.
Baseball stadium as well, yeah. But we were one of the few teams that kind of had our own home. So we very much owned up to it, and the fans brought the energy every game.
All right, tell me about that home, because you get all the RFK stories. Matt's got his raccoon right there. Give me your best, RFK story.
My crappiest RFK story?
No, not crappiest. The one where you're like, because I remember there were times in the press box where like pieces of the ceiling would start falling on you, and you're like, what do I do? Do I stay here? Do I leave? Do I risk it? Like, you always hear about the bugs and the raccoons and the wildlife. Like, what was it really like?
I embraced it, man. It was grimy, but that's what our team was like. Like Taylor mentioned it earlier, I'm from Jersey. I showed up my first day to practice. I had sweatpant jeans on, and I remember Ben Olsen was like, "Dude, you're not in college anymore. Like, you gotta get dressed up." And I was grimy, and we had a bunch of other guys just chips on our shoulders. So RFK has very much resonated with my own personality, and I loved it, man. I've got nothing but great things to say about RFK.
Joseph on those Chris Korb shin guard joints there.
Yeah.
At least Korb wore them. Doesn't look like Shalree's wearing any. Just got the socks.
Do you know what those are?
No.
Yeah.
Paperback book.
Really?
Yeah, he would take the cover. Some of them. That's what he used to tell us, is that he'd take like the top 2 pages or 3 pages and put them in there, or he'd go buy like youth shin guards. And on his legs, that was a crap ball. What a terrible ball that was.
Hit it.
It was like, yeah, exactly. Like what? Yeah. You know what? That was Pat Noonan's fault. That was his fault. Yeah, Sean Reed never wore shin guards. My RFK story, you got to remember Weeby. Oh, this is a great ball.
What a goal.
What a header.
Ooh. Just a ridiculously technical header that is.
World class, man. World class.
Okay, yeah, strikers, tell me how hard this is, because like to contort his body like that, to bring it back there, to go back where it came from in that situation with the way he has to stretch for it, it's just crazy.
Nah, Christian's technique is unreal on that header. Just the run that he makes, and to hit it all the way across your body, to float it up like that, is just perfect technique.
Yeah, that is tough, man.
It's a hard header,
from
but
this game. Go ahead, Taylor.
The only thing is about the technique he didn't have to jump.
Yep.
So the momentum of the ball it allows Christian to keep his body under it and use the momentum. It's a phenomenal header, but if he has to jump 2 or 3 inches, that is exponentially more difficult. Just what a ball in from Ernie Stewart, and the finish was unreal.
But the interchange too, Taylor. At that point, I dropped into midfield. I played Ernie Stewart down the line. Ernie's now a winger. Christian Gomez is now the center forward. Me and Jaime were nowhere near the attacking third on that play.
Yep, that's why it works. That's why it works.
Total football, DC United style. Aleko, the story I heard about Ernie before these playoffs was he knew he was gone after this year. It was that correct? And he said, this group of players, we're never going to play together again. So let's make sure we go out there and, raise a trophy at the end of this thing. Just talk to us a little bit about Ernie, about that speech, about this playoff run in particular.
Yeah, no, he actually didn't say that to us until right before the final. So prior to this game, we didn't know. But Ernie all year long, you could tell he had kind of that like grown man syndrome a little bit, where he was like, you could tell just agitated with the day-to-day grind, and he was already in like almost coaching or managerial mode. So there was a feeling of it, but Ernie wasn't starting for the end of the season. Josh Gross had taken Ernie's spot for the last 7-8 games of the regular season. And then with Dima being out, Ernie jumped into this game, did so well that then we carried that momentum into the final, and Ernie was a huge part of that. That's a foul, by the way, as well.
Yeah, as I said, I knew you were going to get in that. Freddie Adu for Christian Gomez. We haven't even mentioned it, Freddie. This is he signed ahead of the season, of course, a superstar in his own right at this time, no doubt about it. Take me inside the circus, Aleko, because in many ways it was a circus.
The Freddie show? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. I don't know that I ever will see anything like that again. The fact that he was the highest paid player in the league at 14 years old without any experience. I don't think we'll ever see that. But Freddie was overhyped in many ways, but people forget Freddie was a damn good player. It's not that he got overhyped because they're comparing him to Pelé. But if you took Freddie for what he was, I loved playing with Freddie. He had great vision, great skill, great one-on-one ability, so he was a joy to play with. This is not so good one-on-one. Cut off my left foot. I run out of ideas pretty quick.
Freddie was good. Freddie was good, dude. Freddie was a real prospect. Whether he was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, those first 4 or 5 years of his career, he was a real prospect. Alecko's 100% right. He had real pace. He could run at you. He was technical. You look at this sub and you say, what? Why? Freddie gives you a completely different option now because we're going to chase the game. We've got to tie the game. Now instead of having Gomez's ability to play in tight lines and tight spaces, now you've got Freddie who can flat out run. So Freddie was good. The Sierra Mist commercials and all of that stuff that hurt Freddie. It's not Freddie's fault. Obviously, money is what it is. But Freddie was a real player. He was a prospect. You got to remember, Bob Bradley got something out of Freddie a little bit with the national team. Now, Freddie, Alecko, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Freddie didn't help himself either. And that's, it's unfortunate for him at 14 trying to deal with all of this stuff and the hoopla. I think he lost a little bit of a work ethic or ability to try to prove himself, which is why I thought Peter was a good coach for him the first time. But this sub, tactically, genius move by Peter, because now they're going the other way, and we're in trouble with Freddie, Alecko, and Jaime now. It's a different game.
Yeah. Freddie was just his own worst enemy in many ways, in that he was so talented, but he just bailed out on the other things that made you a complete player or a winner in those years.
He was lazy, Alecko. He was lazy.
He was. And Peter was the best thing that happened to Freddie, because Peter would never let Freddie take any shortcuts. That's why Freddie didn't start for us. The whole world wanted Freddie to start. He didn't start for us because Peter made him earn it.
If you look back at Freddie's career, the only coaches he
squared for me, Freddie.
The only coach he really performed for was Peter Novak. Whether it was those first couple of years with DC, or whether it was in 2012, he was actually decent in his last gasp for the Union, and that was coming off of that good Gold Cup he had with Bob Bradley. So those were the guys who got through to him. And he's a cautionary tale now, right? Don't hype up a young kid and totally, like Alecko's right. There was too much hype, but there was a lot of talent. The talent was the reason behind that hype.
Matt,
talent.
we had that all the time. Bobby Convey had a testimonial, and then he played the week later because the work permit didn't go through. These are all the growing pains the league had, and we get it. I understand it, and we should own it now in 25 years, and because there are bumps in the road. But we showed up at RFK. They're having a testimonial for Bobby Convey. And all of us are looking around, including some of the DC players, going, wait a minute, what are we doing? His work permit fails, and he's playing the next week. And we're like, what happened to the testimonial? Like, it was just, we were flying by the seat of our pants so much.
He cleaned his locker.
Yes! Like, oh.
Which was separate from the time that Peter cleaned his locker out for him. That was a separate.
Give me some good Peter Novak head coaching stories. He of course came in for Ray, and Peter's personality, Peter's reputation goes without. Go Google Peter Novak. I guess I would say to the people listening. Alecko, tell me what it was like to be coached by him.
If I could use one word, it's genius. I'm telling you right now, people don't realize how brilliant he was at watching games, breaking down teams, players, formations, all that stuff. It was an honor to listen to him and get advice from him, and I really felt like he took me under his wing, where he got the best out of me, for sure, out of any coach that I had. But just a winner, a competitor, and a brilliant mind, And unfortunately, sometimes the brilliant minds don't have the best way of communicating. So that held him back in many ways. But he was tactically and work ethic-wise and competitiveness-wise one of the best coaches in the history of our league, bar none. And actually, what I'll add, I worked with him at Philadelphia Union as well. And what he did with that Philly team, which was a group of young guys that were unproven, taking them to the playoffs, I thought that was actually his best coaching job that he'd done, more so than our championship team in D.C.
I'm going to go just red herring here. Why didn't Danny Mwanga work out? He's one of the guys where I was like, man, he's going to hit. He's going to be great.
Danny's awesome, man. Danny's actually one of my favorite players, but also people. A kind, gentle soul. I think with Danny, it was more of the rigors of professional soccer that kind of weighed on, because talent-wise, physicality-wise, he had everything. But he's the nicest kid you'll ever meet in your life. And this is a brutal sport, and it's a brutal profession. And sometimes some guys don't handle it the same way as others do.
Is there a way to coach that? Is there a way to take a guy who's too nice and
no
get that tournament? No,
yeah. Taylor hit on the head. I worked personally with Danny Mwanga for a full year, and actually when I was coaching with the New York Cosmos, I brought him to the Cosmos as well. And with Danny, he's the type of guy you put your arm around him and you let him express himself, but you cannot change guys like that. And Taylor will tell you, I'll tell you, until you get that assassin edge as a striker, it's going to be really tough to be consistent or to get by. Because it's a dog-eat-dog world, man. You know, everyone's gunning for you. Taylor's got Brian Namath chopping his legs from under him. And you got to know how to deal with that. You got to know how to deal with disappointment. You have to know how to deal with success.
Great ball. Oh. You know,
I didn't know what
you
to
weren't
do
here for
there.
the first half.
I got caught in two minds there.
Some other headers miss and tough moments.
I needed my headgear.
The hardest thing with Peter, just to chime in on that, Peter retired. We traded for him and he retired, and I never let him live that down. We traded for him, the Revs did, 2003, and 2 days later he retires. And I was like, you know what, Peter? Screw you, because it was like 2003, we lost 2002 MLS Cup, so we always had a good rapport. I played at his old club, 1860 Munich. There's pictures of him all over the place. But as he became a manager, you know, you have to evolve. You know, and Alecko knows this, obviously, because behind closed doors we had many conversations about this, some heated. Peter didn't believe concussions existed. He didn't. He literally would call me and text me, do all this and be like, all this stuff you're doing, you're making players soft. You're doing this stuff. And that's the stuff of Peter. But what he saw in the game and how he saw the game, you know, he was one of those guys that you loved playing with. Everyone in Chicago loved it. And he had personality and he had character, which is... I'm not an old guy, get off my lawn, but we don't have a lot of that anymore. Peter had a lot of it, and it's needed. But Peter, as a manager with the Philadelphia Union and moving on, he and I would have some real heated discussions because I would tell him, but he was, as Alecko said, I enjoyed sitting down, talking with him, understanding how he viewed it. But I'm not totally sure, you know, as he moved on to Philadelphia after D.C. I thought Peter for D.C., Alecko, you can tell me I'm full of it and I'm wrong. He was perfect for this team, and it showed, and he was good at it. The Philadelphia Union teams, I saw some cracks in it where I'm like, Peter, I'm not sure that works anymore.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in that the personalities that we had at this D.C. team were able to regurgitate what Peter was trying to do to us. Whereas the younger generation in Philly, I think they were just like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, it did not resonate with them at all. And it got frustrating for Peter as well, because he was like, I can't get through to these guys. So he definitely had that old school edge to him. And I think we had enough veterans on this team where there were more than a few times where guys squared up with Peter in the locker room.
The goal that he's attacking. Revs take over again. Early ball by Pierce. Looking
made him respect us and how we felt as a group as well.
10 minutes left here in regulation. We know what's coming. There's a New England goal to come. Maybe it's just Doyle and I from here on out. Hopefully we get these guys up.
No, we still got Alecko. You'd think Taylor would have cut out just for the penalties, actually.
Yeah, you would have thought. We'll get to those, of course, when they come.
I thought we had in the bag at this point, though, man. We were still getting chances to get that fourth goal, and all we need to do is keep them off the board. But this is foreshadowing right here.
Yeah.
The fact that, again, you have
Nicky,
another free header off a set piece.
Nicky out. No marking there.
That's where Ryan Nelson was missed, man, because that guy was a general in that back third. He would tell you exactly what to do and kind of be a commander back there, and him not being there was sorely missed.
Did he come in the draft before you? Or were you guys the same year rookies?
No, I believe a year before, maybe even 2 years before, because Nelly came out of Stanford, I think. But he was older. He was like a 24-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
Who was the vocal leader on this team, this DC team? Who was the guy that everybody kind of looked to? Because you have so many guys on this squad. If you kind of go through the list of like, would it be this guy? Would it be this guy? Would it be, up and down the line?
We had so many different kinds of leaders. Nelly was by far the captain. Like, he was the general. When he spoke, everyone listened. And he was so eloquent with his Kiwi accent, motivating us and leading by example. But then we had different guys like Dima, Benny, Nicky. Those were guys that were domestic guys who had been around the MLS for a few years and could relate to the younger guys, still had respect of the older guys. So they were huge leaders. Ernie was a huge leader for us. And then for our young guys, we kind of had our own crew between myself and DC and even Freddie, Josh Gross. So I always love telling the story. When we went out with this team, we went out like 25 players deep. If we were going to go to a bar after the game, we'd have to go with like a table for 25. Because it wasn't like small little cliques. We all hung out together, which was awesome.
A little touch in. Great run by Dorman. Great vision by Kemmler to get it to him. Unlucky on the first touch. Dorman has an excellent first touch. A lot of bodies there.
Just waiting for the inevitable now. It's coming. A couple of minutes to go.
Go to the flag, man. Go to the flag. All right, there you go. See? Smart.
a little dancing. Figured it out finally. Why rush? Oh, that looked like a corner to me.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man. Credit to New England, though, man. Like, you look at the guys on their team and the careers that they've had. This is one of those special games where every single guy you got the best out of. I felt like.
Could you tell Alecko that Clint was going to be what he became?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. I think Taylor mentioned it earlier, where he was like, Taylor was the blonde hair, blue eyed guy, and I was the jersey guy, and he said I hated him. I didn't hate Taylor. We were just different, right? But Clint and I were like two peas in a pod, man. Like, we met at All-Star. We both made the All-Star team that year. And right away, we just hit it off and became good friends. And Taylor will tell you, when we went to national team camp, Clint and I would hang out more than he would with the New England guys. And the more I talked to him, the more I got to know him, I knew he was special. I didn't know he was going to be the greatest player in U.S. soccer history, but he had this swag about him, creativity, confidence, and even his physical build. Like, Clint Dempsey is the prototypical, like, 5v5, 6v6 player. He could beat you.
Get up, Pat. Noonan with his little, like, curly fro gets up and dunks it. I mean, Ramondo had to come, but he didn't have much of a chance there.
That physically hurt me just now. How do we leave him unmarked at the back post?
I mean, it's not just him either. It's everybody.
Our what was shocking.
What a shot there. David Vanoli. Rest in peace. I mean, holy cow, I haven't seen this in a while. That's unbelievable.
Man.
Stream just stopped for anybody else?
Oh, boy.
I guess that's how the game ended, right, Taylor? It's just a 3-3 draw. That's it. Oh, and Taylor's going too. I think we know who pulled the
just
plug.
running for the hills
Taylor's
right
messing
now.
with us, man. Taylor's just.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
So he's back. He's back.
So the best part is my AirPods ran out of batteries, so my whole thing just shut down. So I was like, what happened? What happened? And I could hear you guys the entire time, and I'm listening to Aleko talk about how he and Clint are like, Robin and Batman and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah.
Love that guy. Love that
And
guy.
I'm talking the whole time going, what happened? Where'd everybody go?
We'll get the game back here, I'm sure, at some point.
Taylor,
what were you saying about,
can I ask Taylor something? I want to ask Taylor because Taylor asked me some good questions. I'm going to put Taylor on the spot. How did you feel you managed your group? Because like I said, when we went out DC, we had a bunch of different personalities, but we went out 20 deep when we went out. With you guys, New England, you guys kind of had, like, between you, Raleigh, some of the veteran guys, I feel like you guys had a clear separation, right, between some of the different cliques in your group. But how did you guys?
Absolutely. There was a hierarchy within our group. It was once you got through your first year and you could weather the storm with initiation and pranks and doing it, it was kind of bullying, but it was a old school type of mentality of, no, rookies get this, rookies get that. No, do this, do that. And a lot of guys hated it. Clint hated it and then just didn't do it. Jeff Lorenowitz would tell anyone, no, that group sucked. And then all of a sudden the second year he's like, this group's amazing. Like, it was almost like you had to, remember the old movie, the four of us remember the Skulls? Remember the movie Skulls?
Yeah.
Remember, this secret society, right? It was like, if your first year we were like, no, you can't hang out with us. No, you're not too cool. Then the second, third year, like, yeah, come on in. We'll play cards. Aleko, that's how our group was. And I think that's when you were talking about it and I was off. You talking about Clint, that was a struggle for Clint. And Steve Ralston did a very good job with Clint because they were both fishermen. And so Steve was like, no, this is a little old school here. Steve, this is how Steve Nickel likes it. This is how we do it. Just put your head down, keep working. Clint, that was a tough one for Clint. Clint didn't like that.
I'll tell you a story, Taylor. At that national team camp that we all went to, that January camp, I remember there was
that was a big camp, by the way. There was like 30 guys. Remember that? It
was, and it was brutal too. But
yeah,
I remember that's when I kind of became friends with Taylor. I didn't know, like Taylor said, it's not that I hate him, but I didn't know him, so I disliked him just because he was an opponent. But I was cool with Pat Noonan. And
you don't get to hate Taylor until you get to know him.
Yeah.
So I met Taylor, and I was like, oh, he's a pretty cool guy, whatever. So one night, there was like 4 New England guys, right? It's Ralston, Noonan, Taylor, and Dempsey. And I remember me and Clint were the younger guys in that group, so we had talked about going to dinner that night. So then Taylor reaches out to me, a nice guy, and he's like, hey, if you want, we're going to go to dinner. Why don't you come join us? And I was like, oh, cool. And so I told Clint, being like, oh, of course he'll be cool with this. Like, these are his teammates.
And he was like,
I'm
no.
like, yo, Clint, like, you want to, like, instead of just
go.
us going to dinner, let's go with these guys. And he's like, man, F those guys. And I was like, whoa, what's going on behind the scenes in New England? Maybe that's why they haven't won all these years. But
that wasn't the reason. That wasn't the reason. That was just we weren't drunk enough on game days. That's why. No, but
I
that's
found that really interesting,
Yeah, because you saw him right at the end of that first year. Yeah. He hated it. Yep. He couldn't. It couldn't register with him, right? So he was like, no, screw that. I'm not doing that. Now, you also got to remember, a month before this game, Pat Noonan and Clint Dempsey had a full-on brawl in our training. Okay, it was the one. It never made the newspapers, not the one that Clint and Joey Franchino had. So there was always this internal struggle, but it didn't matter. And the one thing that, Aleko, you'll know this because you played against us, you never saw that on game day. No. We were a weird group where on game day all of that stuff left. Because we had some interesting, and I'm going to use the word interesting, personalities. We had some very interesting personalities, but on game day everyone was on the same page. But I remember it was late 05. We were going on a run. Clint and I went to dinner or did something on the road. And he was like, why was last year disaster? And then 2006, we were with the national team a lot together, preparing for the World Cup, all that stuff. And Clint was just like, why'd you do it? And I said, you got to remember, Stevie and Paul Mariner are old school, man. They are old school. And so they want the players to run the team, so it creates that accountability. And honestly, Lecco, Matt, and Andrew, I'm not totally sure it was right. It worked for us. But I'm not totally sure it was right because, young guys have to come in and learn themselves. But like Parkhurst, James Riley, they hated their first years. They hated it. They were like, God, you guys were such assheads. And I was like, yeah, well, all right. And now, Parky and we're all friends. It is what it is. But that first year, I'm glad you told that story. I thought you were going to tell another story that can't be told publicly about that January camp that Matt and Andrew would love to hear. Yeah, but it's I'm glad Alecko told that because it's very true that here's Clint Dempsey, and it didn't change. We treated him the same way we treated others. So I think Clint now, if you asked him to reflect about the Revs, he'd get it now and respect it a little more. That we did. It was no secret. It was. Nope. It's your first year.
That's what made Clint great. That's what made Clint great. Clint wasn't afraid to do his own thing and kind of not conform and not.
But did you read the article about Clint in The Athletic?
I did.
And how crazy was it that Clint acted the exact same way we did his first year he did to younger players?
Yeah, for sure. But the crazy story was the ones that Eddie Johnson shared of him doing it in Europe, where I was like, I loved it, though. I loved it. That's what I loved most about Clint. He did not care, man. He had a mission in mind, and he was determined to get there.
Absolutely. But he also was he was a gentle soul. Away from it, he is completely 180 degrees different than he was as a player. He and I, it took us a while. It took us about 12 to 18 months. But now I consider, I can text Clint tomorrow. We can reminisce. There's a mutual respect, and I think Clint understands what we did. But this year, the game you're watching right now, if you would have asked Clint Dempsey that year, are you having fun? He would have said, absolutely. All these guys are assholes, and I can't stand them. What him.
By the way, Taylor, I was saying Clint was like the prototypical 5v5 or 6v6 player in that he could defend, he could attack, he could beat you in the air, he could beat you with skill,
and then he beat you with his
guy
fist.
In a small space. Yeah, and then if you want to make it a fight, he would do that as well. Like for me, that's even as I've gotten older in my career, coaching, whatever. Seeing the guys in that small-sided environment, you can really tell who they are. And
Shaw Reed dominated those games, though.
Shaw Reed's another one, right?
Shaw Reed dominated.
Let's make this a Shaw Reed appreciation, 5 minutes right here, because again, it's another player that people, if they don't have the context, they don't get it.
I'm going to tell you right now, if Shaw Reed was American, he would have played in 2 World Cups. Yep, it's not even a question.
And we probably would have gotten further in the World Cups if he was on those teams.
Yep.
Shaw Reed was a monster. So I played against Shaw Reed in college.
Yeah.
When he was at St. John's, he was a striker.
Yes, he was.
He scored against us at UVA in the NCAA tournament, and I was like, this guy's a pretty good number 9, but not great, but he's like a good number 9. All of a sudden, he goes to New England, and it's like, he's a 6 playing as a 9 his entire college career.
Alecko, it's weird. So 2001, the college Final Four, my brother's at Stanford. He's playing. Shaw Reed Joseph's playing for St. John's as a 35-year-old. He's playing. They're playing Indiana, and Noonan's on the field, right? So Noonan and I went to grade school. My brother plays in the first game. My dad and I stayed for maybe 15, 20 minutes. You'll remember the name, St. John's, Alecko. He was it Mateo? David? Was he on that team?
Mateo.
Jeff Mateo. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Jeff was on that team. So that was that team in Shaw Reed. And we drafted Shaw Reed. So you're going to laugh. We drafted Shaw Reed. He went and traveled Europe, and we didn't sign him. I'm sorry, no one signed him. So he comes back 0-2. He comes back for a month of training. And literally in the month of training, we're all looking around going, can he play? Like, can he play for us now? Like, and Stevie's like, no, it's past the date. And so Shaw Reed, then his first year was 2003. But John Murphy was our assistant coach at the time. And he ended up working for Fernando Clavillo. And this is the one thing where everyone says, Steve Nicol did this, this, and this, and he did. But the one thing he did not do is he did not draft Shaw Reed Joseph, and he did not sign me. And those were that year. I remember Shaw Reed and I looking at each other, and I had no idea Shaw Reed was like 3 years older than me. So I thought we were like the same age, and I'm like, Shaz, we're the same age, and he's like, yeah, I'm 25, and I'm thinking, what? Jaime should have scored here, by the way, and we should have lost.
Did you see that? Can we rewind? Do we have the ability to rewind?
There's going to be a replay here. Watch this.
Look at this.
Oh, the cut. Double.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you got to give credit to Rusty for recovering him. He's standing in the right where he would want to put the ball there.
Listen, credit to New England for coming back into this game, but
Shut up.
We had so many opportunities to get the fourth goal.
You should have had 4 goals, You're lucky I'm not color commentating this game, because I would have said you should have had 4 goals. You should have had at least a hat trick.
You're right. I was like 21, man. I was still learning the ropes a little bit.
I know. I could tell. I saw your haircut.
I cut it myself. Those were the days where I got 2 haircuts a year, no lie. Buzz cut in preseason, buzz cut in playoffs. Those were the 2 cuts.
And then midway through the year, your dad would send down the Flowbee and take care of the rest. Don't lie.
Oh, please. Oh, man.
Take me inside your mind right now at this point in your career, Lecco. What are you thinking?
Well,
what are your ambitions? Where did you fit in this team? What were you?
So I kind of mentioned in my rookie year, I was the number 1 pick, but didn't get much of an opportunity playing under Ray Hudson. And we had a weird team. Christo Stoichkov was a player coach. We were kind of going through transitions. Taylor mentioned the Bobby Convey story. Yes. It was a circus, to be honest with you. Peter Novak, in many ways, was a saving grace to me in that he came in from his first day and he said, I don't care who you are, what you've done, I'm going to play the players that have helped me win. So that gave me a fresh start. And bringing back Jaime Moreno, people forget, Jaime was on the Metro Stars the year before this, and he was terrible. I think he had 1 goal in like 20 games, and they thought he was done. So now you put a motivated Jaime and a motivated me together, who are both like, hey, I'm trying to prove to all the naysayers that we can make it. And then you add the Christian Gomez's, the Ryan Nelsons, and all that. And then Peter kind of built that culture where, I think Taylor said this earlier too, practices were so much harder than games. Games were easy. Our Tuesday, Wednesday inter-squad training games were a bloodbath. I mean, if you survived that, games were a cakewalk. So for us and for me personally, my mindset was just to contribute and prove DC right in selecting me in the draft. And I wasn't even thinking I was even on the level of Taylor or these other guys in terms of national team. But once these games helped build my confidence of like, hey, maybe I can hang with those guys and try to fit in. But I always had an issue of like, it took me a little longer to like establish myself. And then just with injuries and concussions, I never got that opportunity.
Lecco, let me ask, because you said it was a bloodbath Tuesday and Thursday inter-squad scrimmages, and you talked so much about how sort of like gritty and grimy and tough this team was. And your defensive midfielder on this team, and for the next few years, is Brian Carroll, who is like underrated, low-key, one of the smoothest, like almost never, you think about defensive midfielders in this league, it's Chris Armas, Ozzy Alonso, Kyle Beckerman, cleat marks up and down your leg. Brian Carroll was never, like, how did he do it that way?
Awesome question. And the simple answer,
how did he end up in that job?
Psychopaths on this team, that we needed someone calm who wasn't going to lose his mind and like get into a fist fight. And BC is exactly that. He's the guy that will always stay calm, organized, do the dirty work, never ask any questions. never, like, not a selfish bone in his body. And it was huge because it provided so much balance to us. I can tell you, Dima Kovalenko could have been arrested for the tackles that he put on people in training. Like, it was insane. And Brian Carroll never responded to it or reacted to it. And that's how BC earned respect of all of us.
Super underrated player. It's a random memory. Against UConn in 2000 when UConn had that great team. I remember Wake Forest came up to Stores, and Brian Carroll played the single greatest game I've ever seen a college defender play. He was playing center back for Wake Forest, and he just completely ran the show against the team that ended up being the national champions that year. Anyway, there's my UConn memory.
No, but Doyle, to your point about Brian Carroll and that question, it was very eerily similar to Michael Parker's and James Riley. There was something about Wake Forest and how the pedigree of player. By the way, am I off?
No, you're here.
You're off.
No, I'm saying, am I offside, Weeby?
You're off. It's the wrap on your wrist
guys.
that's off, Taylor.
You know, when you're the AR and you see that
Your
wrap,
hips
you're
are
saying you can see that white
By
flash.
the way, Aleko, my hips have been off for a long, long time, pal.
Yeah. You're off by a cheek, a normal
Off
cheek.
by a head.
One ham, one holiday ham.
One holiday ham. No, but
One-
there's something about like Brian Carroll and Wake Forest, like the pedigree of players. They were all eerily similar. Oh, so Aleko, you weren't here for this. I told the story. You'll remember, I think, but you might have been gone. Or Troy Perkins gave me the Dikembe, the first game he ever played against me. Okay. So I had a ball, there was like a ball bouncing in the middle or whatever, and I hit it right at him like this, and he caught it. You know how goalies catch it, they bounce it, and he gave me one of these, and I'm like, I told the story of me. I looked at Noonan, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Like, what the hell is it? You're Dikembeing me? I hit it right at you, you Nimrod. Like, it was one of those moments that every time I see Troy, I think of that moment, because I'm like, he gave me the Dikembe. Like, really?
Listen, Troy is a rags to riches story, man.
Yes,
Troy
he is.
was, and it's funny because my roommate when I played at DC United was Doug Warren. Doug Warren
Dougie.
gets cut mid-season, joins New England Revolution.
Yeah.
I am now missing a roommate. I can't afford rent of a 2-bedroom on my own. Troy Perkins, who replaces Doug, moves into my apartment. So in the beginning, I'm like, I'm Team Dougie all the way, man. Like, I'm not down with it. But Troy was our third-string goalkeeper. Every day would pull us aside and be like, hit some shots, hit some shots, hit some shots. I literally witnessed this guy's improvement week after week after week to when he got his opportunity. He was, I think, goalkeeper of the year in MLS one season, which is insane considering he was like an undrafted third-string goalkeeper for a few years. So he didn't know how to handle the moment, Taylor.
It was just awesome because.
Ooh, what was this?
Josh, you don't mess
this
with
was
Sarge,
fun.
man. You do not mess with Sarge.
By the way, Clint Dempsey just made a free safety tackle on Josh Gross, and there's no card.
None.
And
Not
Josh
even-
Gross
nobody's
got
even-
up and sprinted.
Nobody's
like-
even thinking about it. I mean, that was incredible collision between Namath and Clint. Like, the run from Clint to even get to this point? Yeah, this is
I
good
love
stuff.
it, dude.
If I have to go to
rumor has
war
it
with any player, Josh Gross is the one, man.
Well, his nickname is Sarge, right? So
He's one of those
gotta be
early
the one.
ones that, for the concussions, where you're like, that really sticks in my mind of like, oh man, it ended too soon. You as well, Echo. But
Weeby, look at this field for DC United. Namath, Gross,
yeah, name
Aleko.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get anyone. But we're not going to get anyone in trouble right now. But it is crazy to me how many were DC United players. It's just it's hard, and I've had conversations with everyone on it. It's just crazy. By the way, this is Brian Kamler. I forgot he played in this game. Brian Kamler was awesome.
I remember at this point in this game, like when New England scored that goal and we were like, oh, we got to go to overtime. At this point, it was just a matter of like whose legs can still work. I know I was like, I'm just going to keep going, but I know it's going to stop at some point. Like, can we get one before I die? And we just didn't know. Like, This whole back and forth, I'm cramping up just watching.
I mean, there's no extra subs. There's golden goal. So this is a little bit of this is a different era when it comes to sort of deciding a game in extra time. Just desperation.
Oh, I thought we had it right here.
Hadn't played
that should
minutes
have been
in
it.
like
That
5
should have
years.
been it.
Just didn't quite have the cleanliness that you needed on the ball.
Ezra Hendrickson hadn't played 90 in at least 5 years of let go.
Yeah. I was so proud of Ezra because he joined our team and he was like, I'm not going to play, but I'm going to be a good locker room guy. All right, have yourself a switch, okay?
Right?
I'll never forget. I love it. The best was Jay talking to Freddie in these games.
I also enjoyed Jay holding his back after that tackle. Going straight to the old man
Jay
back
was Duke
move.
soccer
like,
to a T.
Right, Aleko? That's what I was talking about. You weren't on. I said part of this like descent toward Duke soccer.
Yeah.
Not a single Duke soccer didn't have any friends. That's a fact, not opinion. None. They just
They're
didn't.
the worst.
They just didn't. So it was. But when they were on your team, I mean, I'll speak for Heaps. You'd go to any game with Jay Heaps on your team. It was just everyone else was like, God, I hate Jay. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he's an awesome teammate. And they're like, really? He is? I'm like, yeah, he is. He's awesome.
This was a time in my life that I was 21, I believe, in this game. This was the time where if I didn't like someone, it bothered me when I found out after the fact that they were like a really good guy.
Yeah.
I was like even Taylor. Like I wanted to hate Taylor, and
I'm still a prick, though. I'm still a prick. Yeah.
Just go for it. It's really easy. It's really easy.
It's not that hard. Aleko, it's not that hard, dude. Seriously, it is.
It helps his brand.
Man. Here's what else I learned: if you're not a good guy, you don't last very long, man.
Nah, it's we had some characters though.
I feel like I've learned the opposite.
Yeah.
It depends how you characterize a good guy, right?
Especially during COVID-19, but this is not a MLS Classic show.
This one could get off the rails real fast, I think.
You mean it didn't already?
Yeah,
Like,
like,
I
can we
feel
just
like we've
skip
been on
ahead
our
to
best
PKs?
behavior.
I mean, by the time we get to penalties, Aleko's going to have 4 buttons unbuttoned.
Guys, just let me know when we're ready.
Oh, God. Taylor, you're still running like...
I mean, that header
it's the
came with like
15th
2-foot handed punch right there.
Yeah, I'm still running
The German training or fitness.
Ooh.
You've told me the German fitness story before. That was when you
Look
were
this
at
smug
1860,
Come on,
right?
Taylor.
See,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's just
Completely hateable.
see. You know what the hardest thing for DC United fans were is a lot of them were going to Maryland games rooting for me about 5 years before that. And so now it reversed. So the first game I played at RFK, Ray Hudson's the coach. I already told you guys that story, but there was a huge piece in the Washington Post about the Maryland guy comes back, all this stuff, and then that happens. Immediately, DC United hated me, and I loved it. See, the one thing I love animosity from fans because it actually means, one, you're doing something well, and two, it means they care. They love their team, and that's why I will play a game tomorrow at RFK just because it brought that. You didn't ask me that earlier, Weeby, and I'm adding it in now.
Yeah.
But for me and my family, and Aleko's the same, our fathers played at RFK. You know, the Diplomats played there. So now for me to go play there, and Raccoons are there, and my worst story, quite honestly, was as an analyst, United States played Germany. You remember this game? It was the 100-year anniversary of U.S.
Germany
soccer.
were the green kits, I think.
Yes.
That, like, bright green kits.
And Josie scored a great goal, if you remember. It was awesome. But there was a wasp nest. Nest sitting on Ian Dark's head. Okay? So you're in the thing, and the thing's bouncing, and Ian's doing this. We had DC Tong, and he's our, he does audio and all that stuff. He's got a broomstick during the game hitting the wasp nest while we're calling a 90-minute game on national television. I just want, if only we videotaped it and put it, you got the crazy. After one of these games, you guys probably did it on purpose. We didn't have hot water. So we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And we didn't have hot water, so we're like, all right. So we get on the bus in our uniforms, go back to our hotel. Dude, you were like, what the hell? And then literally 2007, we lose MLS Cup there, and I wanted to burn it down. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with it. We're good. I love the historic value to this place, but this place could go rotten hell. I want a hot shower, for God's sakes.
Here's a good question to divide you guys. Sean McCaffrey on Facebook. This is for Alecko and Taylor, obviously. Both your dads played. Taylor, your uncle, too. Who was the best of those three players?
Oh, that's a good question, pal. That's a really good question. I looked this up. The one thing I'll give my dad credit for is at a time when you could only play, 3 Americans could only play and be on the roster. For field players, he's in the top 10 for most NASL games. That's an accomplishment because that means you did something to play as an American. But Alecko's dad, man, was good. You know, when your father immediately, when my dad saw Alecko's name, he knew the last name right away. He didn't know a lot of last names of kids that played. There was a reason why he knew Alecko's dad. Alecko's dad was good. Alecko's dad was a real good player. But I'm just proud to say my dad played over 170 NASL games in a time when it was 3 Americans, and that was it. That was it. That's hard to do, but I think Alecko's dad wins that one. I really do. He was a good player.
I was waiting for that answer because I could see his face when I asked this question. He stepped back and he
was
like...
Listen, for my dad's a special human being, man. And I say that because my dad's the most humble person I know. And people don't even know this, but my dad was a World Cup best 11 defender. It's not, and that was when the World Cup was 16 teams, not 32 or 64 or whatever we're going to go to. But the fact
128
came, right. Yeah, right. So my dad is like a hero to me, and obviously I have a slight bias, but I've seen enough games and heard from enough people who are my heroes that tell me how good he was, that I've the utmost respect for my dad and what he's accomplished. And I could say it because he never will, ever. I've never heard him once talk about himself or his accolades. So I'll do it for him.
No, he was good. I mean, Weeby, to answer that question, everyone talks about the Cosmos team, right?
Yeah, of course.
But it's when you talk to people that were there, or people that played it, that people that did it, they mention the real names. Everyone says Pelé and Beckenbauer and Canalia and all that crap, right? But when you dive into the games and you actually listen to people, you know, when Minnesota kicked off, I surprised my dad. He came up because they had 5 Kicks players come up and they celebrated. We all went to dinner beforehand, and my dad didn't know. So it was the Alan Willie, who, by the way, is one of the 9 foreigners in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So don't get me that Jaime Moreno shouldn't be in. But anyways, I digress. It was Steve Litt, and it was my dad. And you sit there and you talk about Cosmos. Alecko's dad was mentioned. So when peers talk, it's better than any one of us 4. Any one of us can look up stats. We can look up anything. It's those kinds of recollections and those kinds of things. But Glenn Meyernick came right up to me the first national team camp I was in, and he looked right at me, and I'm going to say it the G-rated version, but he goes, "I hope you're half as good and competitive as your dad." And that, for me as a son, I was like, you know what, dude, that's awesome. That's it, because my dad's never told me that, anything.
Right.
He's just said, yeah, I played for 10 years. But as Glenn and I got really close to each other and Mooch used to tell stories, the only thing, and I'll end this conversation with this, I think MLS really dropped the ball in 1996, not embracing that generation and having them become the spokespeople and the spokesperson of this league. Because when the Sounders and Timbers and Whitecaps came into this league, and then Montreal, you saw the history of these cities. I just wish MLS in 96 would have done more to have them, because there is a soccer culture that's a huge part of our history. And I'm just proud to say I'm an NASL baby. I know Alecko's proud of that. It's just really cool to say that because they're a huge part of where this sport is now.
I don't think we are where we are without that whole generation. And
no,
my dad says it all the time. When I was a kid growing up, we couldn't find a soccer field to play at. It was always go to a local football field, a baseball field, find a patch of grass. There were no soccer goals, no soccer fields. Now you can't drive a mile without soccer goals, and that generation really introduced the sport to our country. So none of this is possible without them.
What was it like being youth soccer players and the college soccer standouts for both of you, with your dads having the history with the game that they did? Like, maybe they weren't bragging to you about their accomplishments. Maybe they weren't telling you, oh, I was this, that, and the other. But, I mean, that's the sort of mentorship that is invaluable and incredible to have from a father. Like, my dad coached all my soccer teams. He knew absolutely nothing about soccer. He did it because nobody else knew and nobody else wanted to do it. To have a dad who'd been a pro, I mean, I can't even imagine the sort of, like, foundation that gives you.
That's the beauty of it, Weedy, is that my dad knew everything, but he sat in the car and watched games.
That's another
car.
That's a dive.
Like, I have a restraining order on Avery John to this day after this match. But I gave him the thumbs up. Like, hey, I like it, Avery. I'll get you back. Yeah. Avery was one of the guys, though, that I did not want to make upset.
No,
like, even when he fouled me, I'd be like, cool. Or even if I hit him, I'd be like, you good? Are you good? Right.
In World Cup qualifiers, you could hear his tackle from Tobago, and we were playing in Trinidad. It was nasty, dude.
Yeah, he was like Jay Heaps, Rusty Pierce. I liked getting those guys angry. Avery John, I did not want to make upset.
Because he was in control. Avery was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll break your leg. I don't really care.
Yep.
Here's the final whistle. First half of those of extra time here. Rusty Pierce has a few words, says Brad Feldman. Now, I want to go back. What was it like growing up with those guys as your dads, trying to guide you through this game at that time in this country?
Yeah, I was saying my dad, I'm indebted to him because he let me figure it out on my own. He obviously taught me everything I knew with us kicking the ball around at home in the basement or watching games together. But in terms of me out on the field, my dad watched games from the car. He didn't want to be on the sidelines. He didn't want to be noticed. He didn't want any preferential treatment for him or for me or anything like that. So literally up until my days as a pro, it was always a phone call after games and a very real conversation. And he instilled in me of allowing me to be my own biggest critic, because I kind of had his voice in my head throughout my career, basically from high school on. But yeah, definitely very lucky to have that guidance and that leadership in my life from a young age.
Mr. Escuderian was such a gentleman. I remember finally getting to sit down and talk with him. I think it was at the old PPL Park. I don't know what they call it now, Talon Energy Stadium or whatever it is now. And I remember sitting with your dad was there, and I think your mom was there too, right, Alecko? And I remember seeing you afterwards. But I got like 10, 15 minutes, and just there was a real warmth to Alecko's dad that you get a lot of from the old NASL guys. It was just fun for me to see, just because I lived it, I've seen it. I had uncles that did it. It was, just a true gentleman. I grew up differently though, Weeby, and I'm not going to ruin this classics video with what I did, but you got to remember, my mom's side had 3 pro athletes, my dad's side had 5, so it just was like kind of inevitable, and that's part of the reason why my smug face, you want to punch me to death. Like, it just is like, like, it's just, tell this guy to shut up, whatever it is. My dad was never, I thought Ralston scored, by the way. My dad was he never coached me, never did anything. It just, he let me be me, and quite honestly, I quit soccer. I didn't play soccer.
You played baseball, by the way.
Yeah, I played more basketball than any sport I played until I got dunked on sophomore year of high school by a guy that ended up going to the NBA for 15 years and realized I'm not cut out to be the next Dugan Fife at Michigan. So, but the one thing about the NASL genre is they all you know, especially the American, you know, Glenn Meyernick, I mentioned his name, and he and I really connected. Those guys had to fight their asses off to play, man. There are only 3 Americans, guys. That's hard to... So when I went to Germany, my dad was a huge help because I was him in his career and an outsider. But my dad didn't coach me. Like I said, I played basketball, I played baseball. Everyone, you know, there was multiple people in St. Louis said Taylor will never make it because he wants to play other sports. And my dad was like, well, if he doesn't make it, so what? It's all right. He's 11. He'll figure it out. You know, like, and it's interesting we're having this conversation on April 15, 2020 when, you know, our youth setup in our country's going back a little bit to that. And it's going to be interesting to see how development of American players and players in this country come out of that.
Careful, Aleka's going to lose connection again, Taylor.
No.
We got a good Aleko question. Jono on YouTube. Aleko, what was the feeling on this DC team when Amar Guevara won the MVP over Jaime Moreno in 04?
Robbery. Absolute robbery. Jaime's a special player. His resume shows that. But what he overcame to have the season that he had this year and obviously help lead us to a championship. Is that not a penalty?
I mean, Santino got destroyed. You can see him thinking the same thing. He's just like, how? What? Terry? Come on.
Gosh. Let's look at this. Onsides.
Oh, come on. He got absolutely annihilated.
He was off.
Man, I would have had a field day with instant replay in this era right here. I would have had a field day.
He was off.
The fact that me and Ben Olsen both tried tricycles, because I don't think they qualify as bicycles. We both tried tricycles on the same play. Shows you how desperate
watch Ben try bicycle with no ankles. Like, it's impossible. Like, his ankles are sewed on backwards. It's impossible for Ben to try bike.
Oh, man.
Ooh.
Yep, that should have been goal number 5.
Got it on his left, too. Got it on his left.
Serious.
I mean, honestly, Reese looks like a pirate. Like, I can't take Reese seriously. He needs like a broadsword and like a bandana and an eye patch here. Like, it's ridiculous.
Oh man, one of the ultimate funny guys in this league's history. Matt had a great career, but my word, he had a tough one. And I know it was hard for Aleko, and Aleko and I have had this conversation because I think goalkeepers get away with murder, but Matt Reese was one of the best, funniest, quick-witted, and I'll tell you, he took a mean penalty. Matt Reese took a great penalty.
I mean, we're going to find out.
He takes an unbelievable penalty kick.
This thing's going to PKs, and little spoiler here: Matt Reese converts.
You know what's interesting? If you look at this, though, at no point is either team like, "Hey, let's just keep it."
No.
Both teams are like, find the gaps and go. Like, everyone is going. It's a track meet.
Because Aleko, quite honestly, I don't think we didn't want to go to penalties.
No.
Like,
Maybe that's the beauty of the golden goal.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. It is interesting. I've lost in every possible way, so you can go any way you want. It's fine. Should have scored. Should have scored it. Wow. It's 112th minute, and I had it right at the goalkeeper. I deserved to be cut.
Look at Freddie.
Oh, Freddie going. Yeah, you saw him slow down, though. He knew. He was like,
Freddie's been in the game for how long, and he's already tired. Come on, Freddie. Clean that up.
Man. This was one of those games, though, that you've exerted so much effort and energy that you're like, it better not be for nothing, man. Like, and as a player, Taylor, you tell me, especially as strikers, we want the ball. We want the goal, right? We want the glory. At this point, it's like anyone do something to put us out.
If I don't score, if I don't score, let go. Screw it. I'd rather lose.
Big opportunity coming right here with the. Ooh. Noonan.
And by the way, Aleko will tell you that barely missed.
Barely.
Like, it's because of RFK in the background, you don't see it. I'm telling you, this just missed.
I remember in this moment, I had convinced myself that this was our game. Like, we had the better chances. We should win this. We deserve to win this. After that shot, I was like, ooh, I don't know. I'm not sure. This could go either way, and I can't really feel bad about it.
We have about 8 minutes here. One name we haven't mentioned, other than maybe once or twice when he had that opportunity and got chopped down, Santino Quaranta. There's another guy who had just stupid amounts of talent that just didn't get to the level that so many expected of him. Where was he in this team, Aleko?
Santino was an interesting guy, man, and I actually spent some time with him a month or two ago, and he's doing such great things in the Baltimore area right now in coaching. But Santino, like you said, had so much talent. God damn, man.
So many. Chance after chance.
I knew
It's hard to head the ball with that Lego haircut you got.
I was gonna say that's like, what was that? You went into the barber seat and you're like, hey, give me a 5 everywhere. Just give me a 5 across the board.
I cut my own hair.
He takes it off and it goes over here and sits down.
It's like a Lego. It clicks in. It like locks in.
I cut my own hair. I had one clip. That was it. And I wait until I throw it out until I cut it again. That was.
I mean, a lot of people look like that.
Bit,
that looks like the quarantine that I got going right now. I'm gonna try my own hair next week, maybe.
But listen, with Santino, people forget at what, 16, he was an all-star and he was kind of getting minutes. He was one of those guys that maybe didn't have the guidance or the mentorship that he needed. And I'm not so sure that he even would have responded to it, if we're being totally honest. But he had the world at his feet and so much talent. So kind of like Clint in that he's a big guy, strong guy, but soft feet, incredible technique. And Peter was a great coach for him, but Santino will admit he wasn't always locked in. There were times that he would kind of fall off the beaten path, and we'd lose him for a few weeks. But when he was focused, you couldn't stop him. He had so many tools that he could beat you with.
People forget, though, Leko, that Santino played in, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 World Cup qualifiers. He was at every single one of those for the 2006 World Cup qualifying. I know. We sat next to each other on the bench and warmed up together for 100 minutes. He was in that threshold where you're like, uh-oh, here comes a kid. This thing's going to open up, and it's going to open up quick. And then after that, it kind of just fizzled out a little bit.
What I'll say about Santino, though, is, and Taylor can tell you his experiences, but we kind of played the same position, right, as attackers, strikers. Yep. You kind of have friendly battles and friendly rivalries where, think about it, Jaime, myself, Freddie, Santino, there's only 2 spots, right? And so even though we love each other, we're friends, we're fighting, we're competing against each other to get on the team sheet. Santino and me, I'll point the finger at myself. I did not take it well. If I wasn't playing, it was the end of the world for me. I'm not going to be your buddy. Santino was one of those guys that I thought oh man, since we're competing for position, we might have to stop being friends. Santino was a great teammate. Never took it personally. First guy to put his arm around your shoulder if you had a rough game or made a mistake. Always a smile on his face, always a joy to play with. So he was a guy that even when he came in off the bench, you wanted him to do well because he was such a good guy to be around.
I mean, honestly, this is a marathon just to sit here and talk about this game. I don't know how you guys played this thing.
I love that Jaime's been moving the same speed from minute 1 to a minute 120.
What's crazy is Jaime can beat most people in a sprint. He just doesn't want to sprint.
Yeah.
No.
Smart man.
It's funny because we relived the 96 MLS Cup on Banter about a month ago, and they all said Jaime Moreno was one of the fastest players in the league. So many fans see Jaime Moreno, this well, this is Jaime Moreno after a broken back. But when Jaime Moreno showed up in this league, he was eerily similar to Carlos Vela, the way he played and the pace he had. But the broken back changed him. I give so much credit to him to evolving and still having an impact. He could weigh, I mean this, 250 pounds. He'd still have 10 goals, 10 assists somehow.
Those empanadas, man, they add up.
Aleko, who's the greatest DC United player of all time? Is it Jaime or is it Diablo?
It's Marco. It's Marco, and Jaime had the best career, bar none. But Marco, I think, is synonymous with DC United and put DC on the map. And also, Jaime has so much respect for Marco. You know what I mean? So, like, Marco brought Jaime to DC. So I think you put Jaime almost under Marco's kind of tree branch of what he meant to DC United.
How about this?
It's
Here's our Rushmore.
It's kind of wild to look back on that original DC team and think about, like, Marco was 25 when he signed with DC United in '96. Right. He had just been top 3 South American Player of the Year voting. We all know he was, one of the key guys for that Bolivia team that made the World Cup for the first time. Jaime was 22. Didn't work for him with the Premier League team, but he was still one of the best young players in all of South. Like, that's the profile of a modern DP. That original DC United team had 2 DPs from South America, and of course they were going to be amazing.
That's why, Matt, it's so hard to compare eras. It really is, and we do this all the time on Sports Talk Radio or whatever, but it's fun. That's what conversation is, and I enjoy it. That DC United team, oh yeah. Now they would be able to compete absolutely 100%, and in some of the teams when Aleko and I were playing would be able to compete. When you look at the Houston Dynamo team, where Stu Holden and Brad Davis are interchanging and not really starting all the time, just tells you we had Jeff Lorenowitz and Andy Dorman. So there were teams. The difference is Pity Martinez comes into this league and struggles as the South American Player of the Year. That just goes to tell you that something's changed this league, and it's for the better. Yeah. Because the South American Player of the Year coming to MLS in '96 or 2002, they're going to show well, right?
Not always. Not always.
It's true.
Remember that guy, Galvan Ray, King of Goals?
The King of Goals. Sergio
Galvan Ray. What was, how about...
Galvan Ray wasn't the South American Player of the Year, though.
No.
I think he led South America in goals, though, before he...
Yeah, but he was playing in, like, the Ecuadorian league.
He was, exactly. Dude, anyways, carry on.
USL.
What about, do you remember the guy, what was it, Herzog? Andy Herzog, maybe? Was that who it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who was going to, like, be world class. Like, he was playing top flight Europe. And when he came, it was like, nah, man.
That Galaxy team sucked. That Galaxy team sucked for him, though. They were bad.
Rulet?
Yeah. Rude gave him a 7-year guaranteed deal.
All the pressure here is on the kicker.
So you're going to ask me about penalties, Weeby. I'm going to just get it out of the equation so the viewers at home can have an interesting tidbit. 2004 Eastern Conference Final, penalty kicks, has a lot to say about the 2006 MLS Cup Final, penalty kicks.
Nice little nugget there. We talked to Benny Olsen about all this.
Did you talk to him about his penalty?
Yeah, I asked him. Yeah, I had to ask him. Come on, I had to be the one that asked him. He let's say he warmed up after an initial period of sadness there. But he said he was always the guy who would raise his hand for PKs, and he's like, I don't know why I did, because I was no good at it, and I don't know why any coach would ever let me take the PKs. And he's like, but I did it, and here we are.
He was always one of the worst in training, but he was like, yeah, I'm in, and we're like, okay, he wants it. And then he does this.
Have you guys ever tried to kick a ball, though? And tie your ankles together, because that's what it felt like for Ben.
That might have been the first time Benny used his laces to strike a ball too in years at that point.
Now remember, he made one in the
this
first
is karma.
half.
Yeah, well, he banged it off the post and off Ramondo's head.
I love Raleigh, but this was karma.
Oy.
Oh.
And you see, Ramondo's smart. He's not going to watch that thing land and backspin on him.
Nicky's so good at penalties, guys. Like, I have to say...
What was your strategy to beat him in training?
It was tough because Nicky's like, and Taylor knows this, he's a jokester, a prankster as well. So even when we train penalties, he would just play jokes, talk. He would tell you where you're going to go before you go, and you didn't know if he was going to go there or not go there. We gotta watch this penalty from Santino. For me, this was maybe the best penalty in the shootout. Coming in cold in overtime.
Yeah,
like, you can't stop that. Low, hard, window. And Santino, like I said, he had that personality that you never knew which mindset he was in. When he buried that, I know that was like a huge one. If he missed, that could have deflated us and totally ended things. When he put that in, it was like, all right.
Yeah, but he could strike a ball. He really could hit a ball. He had it.
Technique was amazing.
Yeah, he could strike a ball very well. So could this guy. This guy could hit a ball. So Ramondo and I played on the same under-20s, so oddly, I kind of went back to that. So this is 2004, that's 1999, so this is almost 5 years later, and I remember a few tendencies in Nicky. Like, Nicky's very active, right? As long as you are committed to where you're going, and you don't he's very good when you second guess or you try to read him, which is what Steve Ralston used to always do. Steve Ralston would read the goalie. That's where Ramondo does. Ramondo's so good at that. But if you're committed to where you're going, it's a good penalty for Freddie. It's a good penalty.
I don't remember Taylor's penalty here, but I'm assuming diving header.
I flipped it up. I flipped it up and did a diving header, and it was all in one touch, so it counted, Matt.
He fired it in.
You know what? I hope both of you check on your microphones. By the way, pick it out of the net and let go. Santino's I wipe my rear end with Santino's penalty.
Stop.
Oh, yeah. Come on, you're never touching that penalty, you knucklehead. Look at that. Sure. James Vanderbeek with a great penalty.
Yeah, that is a great penalty.
You were very serious on the way back, too. Head down, just...
Well, my head has to go down. It's a 9.5. It's heavy.
Yeah.
Watch this Lego penalty.
Hey, don't look at the hips. Don't look at the hips, Reese. Whoop.
Whoop. Whoop. He got stuck. He's frozen in the air, diving the wrong way.
Guys,
so
I almost had the most embarrassing penalty in this. I almost slipped and fell.
Yeah,
watch my plant leg. Watch my plant leg on the replay. Whoop.
So I'm not actually being an ass. This impacted the penalties afterwards. Because everyone was like, oh no, did Aleko slip? Now but Aleko's left-footed. He's on the other side. So when we talked about our penalties, everybody's like, oh no, maybe I should have shorter steps.
He really
Nicky
quickness that Nick has.
With the bear paw.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
The thing with Nick, and I've said this before, he's so quick and athletic and agile. He, in my opinion, can buy an extra little split second before he guesses. And
but
he still plays those mind games
down the middle, though.
Sure. But how many goalkeepers already take themselves out of the play because they leave too early? Whereas Nick can kind of wait a little bit longer because he could rely on his athleticism and that reflex. And we thought it was game over here. Put this in and we're done.
Yeah, you just never expect that.
You don't. Honestly, you could argue Jaime's was worse than Ben Olsen's.
Jaime's, no one saw that coming because he was automatic. I don't think he had missed all year.
No.
I don't think he had missed all year.
He looks like he's like...
tired
But
legs.
the other thing is, and this isn't me being an ass, but it is what I am. Everyone played each other 4 or 5 times, right, Aleko? How many penalties did Jaime take a year? So he had 2 penalties against us in the regular season. He second-guessed himself because Because Jaime used to always open up and come across his body, and every goalie would fall over his
He
face.
switched it up, yeah.
He second-guessed himself because he scored on a couple on Matt Reese early on in the year. This is a good penalty from Shawry.
How about the Brian Carroll penalty? I might take back my Santino penalty, and let's talk about this Brian Carroll penalty.
See, I mean, Santino's a good penalty. This one's...
And this was unexpected
I mean-
because BC is not a finisher.
No.
But this is textbook, man. Look at this.
Plus, he ran from Charlotte, North Carolina to take that penalty.
He's a big Blanco fan.
It's hard,
And-
dude. It's real. I mean, he's...
Look at
he
it.
was-
That's how
he
happy I
was-
was.
Oh, he was so good in Boy Meets World. That's a great penalty.
Guys, Brian Carroll played 0 minutes the season prior to this. Sat the bench his entire year. Clint. I think the nerves got to him a little bit, man.
Yeah, you can kind of feel some nervousness with the amount of time he spent looking at the referee, and it just
Love
didn't
it.
feel right.
Hokey pokey, Nicky Raimondo.
Of course, DC goes on to win MLS Cup against the Wizards. Back in the promised land for the black and red. Taylor, what are you feeling like right now on the field?
Right now, in April 15th, 2020, it's the same
No,
thing.
back in 2004.
It's the same thing. No, this was a dude. You hate losing on penalties, but you got to remember at this point in my career, I hadn't lost 4 MLS Cups.
Yeah, just had the
Right,
one.
so you were just like, okay, you know what? It was a hard-fought battle. It is what it is. I, on a personal level, had a huge amount of respect for this team. I thought this team, DC United, was a good team. They played well. They had their chances. So you sit there and say, yeah, it's... Listen, this is why you play. This is why you train. This is why you do things. And you tip your cap. We gave it our best shot. But these guys were good. They were good. And they deserved to win this one. They had the more quality chances than we did. Absolutely. But, you know, at that moment, Weeby, you're asking me, you're sitting there going, nah. But RFK is a special place. And I've lost many big games there. I've scored many big goals there. But besides the point, it still is a special place. And even when I watch this now, I'm like, that was fun. That was pretty cool.
This was a special season for you guys, Aleko. Before we let all of us go and get back to doing whatever we're doing, pounding bottles of red wine, etc. What'd this mean to you? What'd this mean to that team? What'd this mean in your career?
Yeah, I think Taylor touched on a lot of things, but what a special group we had. You know, obviously older now. I'm 37 years old now. I've been on a lot of teams. I've worked in a lot of different capacities in soccer. I never have had that feeling that I had that season with that group of guys, where I didn't have to look over my shoulder. I could go 110% every single day. Fists were thrown in training in our workplace, but we were brothers at the end of the day. And it was kind of a hectic culture, environment, whatever you want to call it. I agree with Taylor, it probably wouldn't fly today. But if I could transport back in time that feeling that we had of togetherness and stepping between those white lines and knowing it's going to be a fight and every guy behind me is going to stick up for me was a feeling I'll never forget. And there were so many ups and downs, different things. You talked about Freddie and Jaime, like Christian, all these different storylines that came in. Peter's first year as a coach. It was just a special group. And I think the fans at DC United, they deserved it. The city deserved it. It was just a special time and one that I'll never forget.
It's fun reliving it with you guys. Of course, every Wednesday and Friday here at the MLS YouTube and Facebook pages, we're doing the MLS Classics Remix. But every single day at 4 p.m., we've got a classic match. This Friday, tune in for the Cascadia Clash in the 2014 playoffs. This is Obajuice against the Timbers. Should be a good one. 4 p.m. Eastern, as always. 12 Eastern on the MLS Twitter page, Kick Around Live. I think Marisa Dew is on that tomorrow. We've got Instagram Lives with players every single day, 7 days a week at 2 p.m. And tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be watching as I stump Charlie Davies. I guess that's in, 20 minutes? Charlie Davies and David Goss. I got 10 questions for him, from easy, medium, and hard, and then finally one that's hard as hell. That's the Dima Kovalenko question. So if you want to play trivia with us, we're doing it on Twitter. We're doing it on Instagram Live as well. So tune in, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
No, this was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Be safe, everyone.
Same. Adios.